The two of them walked out of the funeral parlor with Cedric leading the way. He said, "This is the first time I've experienced something like this at a funeral." He looked up and added, "I'm not one for keeping up appearances, but this is a bit much." Cedric leaned against the wall, looking completely at ease. Irene was utterly confused. Then Cedric looked at her, smiled and said, "And yet, you're sneaking off with me on a day like this?" Irene was speechless. She stared at Cedric, wondering what is this guy talking about. He casually continued, "Sneaking off on a day like this? You're quite naughty, aren't you?" Irene was stunned. Cedric went on, "Please allow me to offer my condolences. Though I wasn't close with young Master Felix, I've heard a lot about him. It's truly heartbreaking that someone like him has left this world." He stared at her and asked, "How did he die, anyway?" "Thousands of people are mourning his death." Irene stood silently in her black attire, which fluttered in the wind, listening to him speak. "Look around," he said. "It's just a bunch of insects wasting air, crawling back and forth." Cedric lowered his face, his dark eyes glinting as he muttered, "Now that I think about it, I remember he once set free an insect I was about to kill." The atmosphere suddenly grew heavy, sinking into a deep gloom. Irene looked at Cedric, wanting to curse him. "So, you're moping because some melancholic bug bit you?" She recalled something and said, "Even a tiny insect has a reason to live." Cedric was taken aback, then smiled brightly. "We can't possibly know what an insect's life is like." She continued nonchalantly, "Felix's death is indeed a loss, but he acted according to his beliefs, and this is the result. It's just that simple." Cedric kept staring at her, but Irene quickly realized this wasn't what she intended to talk about when she approached him. She sighed, "Old habits." Cedric suddenly said, "Your ability to charm people is no joke." He looked at her and smiled. "What you said was good. You don't need to be so long-winded. I'd accept it anyway." Cedric lifted the veil covering Irene's face and said, "I'll indulge your wishes." Irene, irritated, swatted his hand away. "Do you even know what I want?" Cedric grabbed her hand, his gaze intense. "It's obvious. You want to be loved by me." He continued, "It may not be genuine, but I can make you feel truly loved." His hand touched her cheek. "Your face is quite cute." Irene was flustered as his fingers moved to her lips, brushing them lightly. "I like these small lips. Biting them would be delightful." He leaned closer. Irene's eyes widened, and she quickly pushed him away, shouting angrily, "Back off! Don't touch me like that. I didn't call you out here for this." Cedric looked at her, wide-eyed and confused. "Oh, really?" Irene said, "I need you for something else." Cedric, surprised, asked, "What? Why?" Irene explained, "I see potential in you." Cedric raised an eyebrow. "Potential?" She elaborated. "You act like a moth drawn to a flame, but you won't dive into the fire because your death would be meaningless, right?" He gritted his teeth, annoyed. "Don't talk nonsense." Irene proposed, "I can give you a life with meaning. I really need you." He asked, "You want to use me?" She clarified, "I'm asking you to let me make your reckless life worthwhile." But he replied, "You're shocking me. Has anyone ever fallen for your words?" Irene smiled, waving a piece of paper in her hand. "Of course, once you're hooked, there's no escape." She held up the paper and said, "If you're interested, come here." Cedric seemed gradually persuaded by her words but remained hesitant, unsure of what to do. Finally, he looked at the paper, took it and said, "I'll take it for now." Irene smiled. "You made the right choice, second Prince Cedric." Cedric sat on a throne surrounded by roses, his face tinged with melancholy. According to Irene's account, Cedric was merely a supporting character in blossoms on withered branches. Unable to bear watching the female lead, Claudia, be imprisoned and waste away under the male lead's control, he helped her escape the Empire. But the outcome was tragic. While fleeing, Cedric was caught. Lucas, looking at Claudia with lifeless eyes, asked, "You entrusted your fate to this lowly thing?" Lucas drew his sword and stabbed Cedric on the spot. Claudia could only see blood before her eyes. Lucas killed Cedric and then tore out his heart right in front of her. A jaded, unremarkable figure like Cedric didn't save Claudia out of love. He was always searching for a reason to live, yearning to one day live passionately. Claudia merely gave him that chance. Cedric needed a spark to ignite his will to live, and that's why, in that moment, he took the paper. That's why Cedric would never refuse her offer. Irene thought to herself, then suddenly panicked. I'm late. She rushed off, but someone called out, Miss, you're the daughter of Viscount Amber, right? Irene, startled, responded, Huh? Yes, that's me. Before her stood Duke de Appon, his stern gaze fixed on her. You've been busy running around, haven't you? He said. Irene bowed respectfully, her voice softening. I'm truly sorry for keeping you waiting due to my busyness. The Duke replied, Erica made a request to me. Irene, surprised, asked, Lady Erica? The Duke placed a hand on his forehead and sighed. For the first time in her life, that girl wants something. What did you do to Erica? Irene thought for a moment, recalling their recent conversation. I only gave Lady Erica a different perspective on the world, she said. The Duke glared at her. You mean debauchery? Irene, unfazed by his intimidating aura, calmly explained, more accurately, freedom. Even if it leads to regret, everyone has the right to choose freely. The Duke retorted, her choices are mine to make, and there will be no regrets. You have no right to interfere, young lady. Irene nodded. That's true. But even so, Lady Erica still caused a stir, didn't she? The Duke responded, I think Lady Erica has the right to choose her own life. If it were me, I'd fight to the end, even if it meant failure or death. The Duke frowned, exasperated, and closed his eyes. Sowing false hopes in my daughter is a shameful act, but I'll let it slide this time. He turned to her and added, I hope you stay with the Chamberlain family for a long time. With that, he walked away, leaving Irene standing there, feeling adrift and unsure of what to do next. Irene sighed and slumped down. Someone called out, Rin! She looked up toward the voice. It was Claudia. Claudia smiled cheerfully, reaching out her hand. I've been looking for you. Where have you been? Are you tired? Irene, surprised, widened her eyes and grabbed Claudia's hand, smiling. Sorry for worrying you. There were some weirdos today that really wore me out. Irene grinned brightly and added, But seeing you, Claudia, I'm instantly recharged. Claudia laughed. Really? Then let's go eat something delicious. Irene, delighted, replied, Sounds great. Holding the camel map marked with symbols, Irene let out a thoughtful hum. She thought to herself, by now, those people from the guild should have contacted me. Why no news? Something smells dangerous. Her hand instinctively tightened, crumpling the map. She sighed in frustration. What do I do now? Claudia, approaching from behind, spoke up. Staring at it won't solve anything, will it? Irene turned around, surprised, and placed the map on the table, replying, Not at all. Claudia said, Then stop looking at it. Come help me pack. Irene, excited, responded, Sure, but she added, In the end, it's just the three of us going. The Duke has to stay behind for family duties, and Lady Olivia's health isn't great. Claudia replied, But I'm still thrilled. It's an excuse to slip away quietly. Claudia beamed. It's the first time the three of us are traveling together. I'm so excited. In her mind, she pictured the three of them laughing and having fun in a meadow. Claudia's face lit up with a happy smile. Irene said, It's not just for fun, you know? Claudia, still cheerful, replied, Still excited as always. Irene laughed. True, it's exciting. In another room, Irene said, Bring spare clothes, magic items for protection, and some medicine. In front of her was a neatly packed suitcase. Exhausted, she picked up a bottle of medicine, intending to put it in the suitcase. Since we have to keep changing appearances to avoid being exposed, we need to prepare a lot, she said. Holding the bottle close to her face, she examined it carefully. Inside was a shimmering purple liquid. From what I know, there are many types of potions, she continued. Let's try it once and see. The scene shifts to the secret Chamberlain mansion. Irene's voice echoed through the halls. Don't you feel lonely here, Felix? Felix replied, It's quite comfortable. This place is quiet and peaceful, perfect for focusing. Irene said, At the very least, you should have a servant. Like me, for example. Felix laughed. Ha. Joking again? She responded, I'm not joking. Felix smiled. Telling me that is enough. Irene happily picked up a wooden box and said, Oh, I came to give you this. Felix took the box and opened it, asking curiously, What's this? Inside were several vials of purple liquid. Irene explained, "Your face draws too much attention, so I thought it'd be better to disguise yourself." Felix picked up a vial, saying, "Well, many people already think I'm dead." He uncorked the vial, sniffed it, and drank it without hesitation. Irene, sitting across from him, watched nervously, thinking, this feels like being tested by a teacher. Felix's face darkened as he spoke. Who made this, Irene?" Terrified, she thought, "Oh no, I messed up." Bowing her head, she stammered, "Did I do that badly, Felix?" Sniff. Felix quickly said, "For your first try, this is already impressive." Still looking down, she mumbled, "That was the result of 10 failed attempts." Felix, surprised, said, "Only 10 tries, and you got this? That's still really good." Irene perked up. "Really?" Felix smiled. "This stuff could have serious side effects, so don't ever drink it, Irene." He closed the box. Irene thought, just say it's bad if it's bad, short pain is better than long pain. Felix asked, "But why did you suddenly start making potions?" She replied, "It just came to me yesterday, so I tried. I wanted to contribute something." Felix asked, "So you perfected this in just one day? You've never studied this, right?" She nodded. Yeah. There's nowhere to learn alchemy outside the academy, and I've never studied there, so of course not." Felix covered his mouth, saying, "I spoke out of turn." Irene laughed. "Haha, I'm not interested in that stuff, so it's fine." In her mind, she thought, I went through elementary to high school on government loans, then university. I'm done with studying. Smiling, she continued, "I've lived my life to the fullest, so I have no regrets." Felix smiled. "Yeah, I know. The path you've chosen is always right." He added, "I don't often give praise, but Irene, you're truly talented." Flustered, Irene waved her hands. No, you don't have to say that." Felix looked at her seriously. "I'm not just saying it. To achieve this through self-study alone, you're genuinely talented." Blushing, she scratched her neck. "Then I'll make more. Okay?" Felix replied, "If you want. When I have time, I'll give you some feedback." Embarrassed, she said, "No need, really. You must be busy." He chuckled. "I'm busy finding ways to help. Don't take that joy away from me." Irene shyly said, "You must be tired. Thank you so much." Playing with her hair, she thought, Felix's attractiveness seems to keep increasing. Her gaze drifted to his chiseled chest straining against his shirt. Is that because of the demon's power too? Even his clothes looked tight. An image of her friend Martina popped into her head, giggling shyly. "If I could date a guy with a body like that, I want to stroke it like playing a guitar every day." Irene, embarrassed, covered her face, her mind erupting like a volcano. She screamed internally, "Ugh!" Felix, concerned, asked, "What's wrong all of a sudden?" She stammered, "Maybe I'm the one possessed by a demon." Felix, puzzled, said, "Huh." Soon, evening arrived. In a room on a bed, a pair of legs peeked out from under a blanket. A soft and ha came from the figure. Felix, tossing and turning, his face flushed, sweat beading on his forehead. He muttered, "Hot." Placing a hand on his forehead, he thought, even though I recover quickly, my body's been exhausted these past few days. My mind feels strained. Lying on the bed, his clothes disheveled, he thought, my body feels so heavy, like someone sitting on me. Slowly opening his eyes, he saw Irene sitting on top of him. His half-open eyes, hazy with fatigue, let out an ah. Trembling, he reached out and caressed Irene's cheek. Or so he thought, but he was merely stroking the air. His face flushed. He laughed. Ha-ha. In his eyes, Irene was leaning down, her face close to his. He thought, it's like a dream. In the dim room, Felix's flushed face glistened with sweat. "Nice illusion," he said, touching her chin lightly. "But stop here, Lares. You think this trick will work?" Annoyed, he added, "Get lost." Irene, silent, placed her hand on his chest, stroking it, startling Felix. Still atop him, she smiled brightly, calling, "Felix, Felix." The illusion struck a deep emotion within him. Furious, he pinned Irene down, growling, "I said stop. Are you listening?" The demon rambled in his head. "Why so harsh? You want this. Holding her and loving her every day. Wouldn't that be nice?" Felix's sweat-drenched face hardened. Seems my words mean nothing to you. Shall I stab my heart with the holy sword to satisfy you? He proposed, imagining a single thrust to his heart, ending them both. The illusory Irene laughed. Hypocrite, you want to be alone with her, pretending to be innocent and kind, but your heart is filthy. Felix snapped. What, Lares? The demon continued. Even after she left, you lingered, inhaling her scent, blushing. Lares mocked. How can your heart and facade be so different? Worse than a demon. Felix's hands, gripping the shoulders of the illusory Irene, trembled. Lares asked, Know why I'm doing this? Because Irene is right here. Felix snapped out of it, calming down. He looked around. No one was there, only the sound of rain. Just a dream, he thought, sighing in relief. Suddenly, something draped over Felix, blocking his view. He turned and saw Irene. I noticed earlier, she said, sitting beside the bed with a wet cloth and a basin of water. Felix, did you have a nightmare? You don't look good at all. Felix's cheeks were slightly flushed, sweat dripping down. He replied, I'm fine. He could sense a sweet fragrance. Irene said, You have a high fever. As Felix reached out, he asked, Irene, do you still have that sword? She replied, Why? Suddenly, Felix pulled her close. I warned you carefully, he said. The atmosphere grew tense, his heart pounding, their lips drawing closer. Irene, startled, bumped her forehead against his and asked, Felix, do you want me to check your temperature? Outside, the rain continued to fall, leaving just the two of them alone. After checking his temperature, she stood up and said, Your forehead's burning like fire. You're quite sick. You should lie down and rest. She added, I knew this might happen, so I prepared a wet cloth for you. Her thoughtfulness left Felix speechless, at a loss for words. He lay back down, closed his eyes and sighed. Irene looked at him, thinking, He's like a prince trapped in an ice castle. Then Felix suddenly asked, If I died, would you be sad? Irene, who was wringing out the cloth, panicked at his words. She exclaimed, Why would you say that out of nowhere? You survived that dangerous incident, and now if you die, I won't forgive you. She placed the cloth on his forehead. Felix said, I feel like I might die right now, but I don't want you to be sad. Irene's eyes filled with sorrow as she looked at him and called, Felix, holding a stack of papers. She asked, What are these? Not only were there papers in her hands, but piles of notebooks surrounded her. Felix answered, Those are research notes from when I was young. Irene said, Wow, thank you so much. Touching his forehead, he said, If I left them here, they'd just gather dust. Seeing his exhausted face and dark circles under his eyes, she asked, Have you slept? Felix replied, Yes, I slept well. He looked at her and said, I'm sorry to say this, even though I'm the one who suggested it, but I don't think I can teach you directly. Irene peeked out from behind the stack of papers, her eyes wide with surprise. What happened? Felix covered his face, avoiding her gaze, and said softly, I'm sorry. If possible, I'd like us to spend less time alone together. Please listen to me. Irene clutched the papers tightly and replied, Okay. The scene shifts to a train, gleaming under the sunlight, exuding an air of opulence from its wheels to its body. Looking at it head-on, Irene exclaimed in awe, This is the first time I've seen it in person. It's even more amazing than I imagined. Renting it for the day was the right call. Claudia smiled and suggested, Should I just buy it outright? Irene winked. Rein it in, Miss Moneybags. Claudia, still thrilled, said, But I love it so much. Irene cautioned, You're getting too excited. Meanwhile, Felix, surrounded by piles of luggage, watched the two playful girls. Irene explained, You don't even use it often, so there's no need to buy it. Wasting money isn't good. After her lecture, Claudia could only say, Fine. The train's smoke rose, its engine chugging as it began to move. Claudia, sitting in the compartment, was brimming with excitement. It feels like we're going on an adventure. She smiled, gazing at the scenery outside. No hotels, no tour companies, no famous destinations or local specialties, not even convenient transportation. Irene smiled. It's inconvenient, but you still look so happy. Claudia replied, Of course. This is my first time going to such a remote place not advertised in travel brochures. Irene, delighted, said, If you're happy, I'm happy too. Claudia laughed. Haha. If Rin's happy, I'm even happier. Rubbing her sleepy eyes, she added. But first, I'm going to catch up on sleep from the past few days. Irene smiled. Sleep well. After Claudia left, only Irene and Felix remained. Felix called out, Irene. She responded, yes. Felix covered his face with his bag and asked, did you eat something? Like candy? Sitting on the opposite seat, she replied, no, I didn't. Is there a sweet smell, Felix? He turned away abruptly, saying, it's nothing. I'll go sit in another carriage. Irene, surprised, looked at him. Why so sudden? She watched him, feeling reluctant, and impulsively grabbed his sleeve. Felix saw Irene looking at him with sparkling eyes and a sincere expression. She asked, don't go, please. His heart skipped a beat. Don't go, please. Those words made Felix blush furiously from embarrassment. He looked at her, thinking, too close. Covering his face, he glanced at her and said, Irene, listen to me. As Irene looked at Felix, her mind wandered. She recalled Benjamin's mocking chuckle when he said Felix had carnal desires for her. She thought, does Felix really feel that way about me? If it's true, would I hate it? Imagining Felix kissing her, she pictured a vibrant, colorful scene. Felix gently touching her cheek, the two of them slowly drawing closer, their eyes closing, their lips brushing together. The thought made her face flush red. She realized, maybe I don't hate it. While she was lost in thought, Felix let go of her hand. He said, why don't you ever listen to me? Turning away, he added, don't make me threaten you with force. His footsteps faded as he walked away. Without thinking, Irene rushed after him, her mind fixed on one thought, don't go. As his hand reached for the door handle, she grabbed it. Why won't you take responsibility? She demanded. He looked at her, confused. What are you talking about? Irene held his hand firmly, resolute. You tamed me, so you have to take responsibility for me. She grasped his trembling hand and said, stroke me like you always do. Placing his hand on her hair, she added, just touching like this won't break me. Felix's hand shook as he called her name. Irene. She replied, yes. Something flashed by, and she yelped, ouch. A loud roar followed as the glass door cracked from Felix's punch. With an angry expression, he said, if you don't want to see me lose it, stop this now. The glass creaked with a crack, crack. Terrified, Irene said, this carriage is so soundproof that even with the state of the train, no one would come. Whatever you do here, no one would know. The glass door shattered completely. She swallowed hard. So, can you go easy, please? Hesitantly, she asked, is Felix's desire to kill me? Felix lowered his head, dejected. How could it be? She pressed. Then is it the kind of desire to break my limbs, gouge out my eyes, pull out my nails, butcher me, rip out my heart or hang me? Felix, bewildered, froze. How could I dare do such things? Irene's smile was brighter than ever, radiant like the morning sun. Then what's the problem? Felix hesitated. I might end up destroying you, Irene. She laughed. Ha, raising her hand confidently. Don't worry, I'm tough. I won't break that easily. Felix was at a loss for words. You see the state of the train, and you can still say that? Irene stepped closer, grabbing the hem of his shirt. My body may be softer than the train, but even if Felix crushes me with all his strength, I won't break. She smiled again. You know that, Felix. Then she hugged him tightly, closing her eyes and leaning into him. So, stroke me. Felix's hands hesitated, but finally, he gently ran his fingers through her hair. His face flushed completely red. Irene asked, how does it feel? He softly replied, warmer than intoxication. Twirling her soft locks in his hands, he added, and sweeter than death. Deep within, the demon spoke. This girl's got more guts than I thought. At this rate, it's only a matter of time before you experience complete pleasure. But the demon was countered by another voice. I'm a part of you, yet you don't know what love is. If love were just the joy humans feel, there'd be no need for a demon like me to exist. The demon retorted, no existence is greater than a demon. The other voice replied, a demon can't exist without humans. It asked, so, what is human love? Tell me. The other laughed. It's a demon, a paradise, and a hell. It's pleasure, Rage, happiness, pain, and sorrow. No matter what words you use, they're never enough to fully describe it. Most love leaves behind profound regret, and that's when I appear to become a complete demon. Go to the human world if you want. I can even grant you freedom after this long, endless war ends. The demon smiled faintly. Humans are flawed, imperfect creations, and love is just something to fill those voids. Be it in body or mind. Sooner or later, I'll be free. I'll devour you and become a truly great demon. The target of the demon's fixation was none other than Felix, bound by the chains it created. But why did this thing of mine keep feeling sharp stabs of pain? It was a beautiful sunny day at sea, with a large, sturdy ship cutting through the waves. At that moment, a voice rang out. "We can't sail the ship out there." It was Irene Amber's voice. Behind her stood a group of people, and she was shocked by this news. The captain asked, "You folks said you wanted to go to Camel Island, right?" She replied, "Yes, that's right." The captain sighed, taking a puff of his cigarette. "It's not exactly difficult to get to the island. It's that we can't get close to it. If you don't want to die, you'd better—" His words trailed off. "Die?" Irene asked in disbelief. "Even when there's no storm and the sea is completely calm?" The sunlight reflected off the water, creating a breathtaking, shimmering scene. The captain explained, addressing their confusion. "Even I find this phenomenon strange. If you get close to the island, the ship will suddenly sink, as if something is pulling it down. Everyone on board would perish in the sea. It's like the place is cursed." Felix spoke up, puzzled. "Why haven't you requested help from the central authorities?" The captain replied, "Camel Island has long been private land. We didn't know about this for years. The Fenno Merchant Guild even claimed that part of the sea as their territory, forbidding anyone from approaching. So what could we do? But about a month ago, they suddenly sold the island and left. Only then did we learn the truth. We haven't had time to report it to the central authorities, but we suspect they did something. That's why strong men have been hurriedly moving wooden crates, contents unknown, ever since they left. It's not just one or two people who've died passing by Camel Island. Now, the island seems to radiate a dark aura, bringing misfortune and death to anyone who approaches. They must have angered some divine spirit." The scene shifted to the picturesque coastline, with clear blue waters, a gentle breeze, and birds chirping melodiously. The heroine sat with Claudia, deeply shaken after her conversation with the captain. "He said people died. Did all the guild members die?" she asked, though it wasn't directly related to her. Suddenly, a grumble sound came from Irene's stomach. She felt ashamed, thinking, in a moment like this, am I even human? Claudia, however, just smiled and stuffed a sandwich into Irene's mouth. Still, Irene blamed herself. "I don't deserve to eat." Claudia, calm and cheerful, replied, "Why not? If you're hungry, just eat." Irene asked dejectedly, "What do we do now?" Claudia replied, "Just buy a boat, and we're good." She continued, "You look beautiful, like blooming roses, radiant and pure." She added, "We also have the people Rin hired." Irene perked up a bit. "Right, I was referred to them. I heard they're very reliable. They even promised to erase their memories after the mission is over." Even so, she was still deeply worried and said glumly, "But I'm still anxious. Though, I'm really happy because it's been a while since I've traveled so far." Claudia smiled brightly. "I used to feel uneasy because people kept staring at me, but now, thanks to the disguise magic, I feel so much more comfortable. Big brother must feel relaxed too, enjoying the fresh air after so long." In the distance, Felix was cheerfully chatting and eating with the others. Irene zoned out for a moment, but she quickly smiled, feeling somewhat comforted. "Your words really cheer me up," she said. A clack sound rang out as a pesky bird with fierce eyes swooped down, snatching her sandwich in a flash. Caught off guard, Irene could only cry out, "My sandwich!" Her anger flared up like a blazing fire, and she immediately chased after the wretched bird to reclaim her food. "Where did you come from, you filthy thief?" Seeing this, Claudia jumped up in a panic, accidentally knocking over a box of snacks. Irene ran a long distance but couldn't catch up with the bird. Exhausted, she collapsed onto the sand, out of breath. "Give me back my sandwich!" she shouted helplessly, lying on the beach, writhing and crying. She stopped crying abruptly when she looked into the distance, and saw a boy in a brown sailor outfit lying on the sand, waves crashing around him. "Who's that?" She rushed over to him. "Are you still alive?" The boy's face was pale, lifeless. She shook him vigorously. He coughed up water, turned to the side, and hacked violently. Flustered, Irene didn't know how to handle the situation. "Can I ask, are you okay?" Finally, the boy stopped coughing and sat up, looking utterly miserable. "It's been a while," he said. At this moment, our heroine was utterly flustered, unsure of who this person was. She could only pretend to recognize him. Yeah, long time no see. You're Andrew, right?" The boy looked at her helplessly and corrected. "It's Anthony." Embarrassed, Irene said, "You're still alive." He sighed, dejected. "I thought I was really done for." Irene's eyes welled up as she picked seaweed off his hair. "Don't die," he replied. "Well, then I'd have to take twice the risk. I can't die because of this injustice." From behind, a familiar voice spoke up. "A friend of yours, Irene?" It was Felix, approaching them. "You suddenly ran off, so I followed you." He glanced at the unfamiliar boy, noticing his dry, cracked lips from dehydration. Felix handed him a bottle of water. "Drink this." The boy didn't refuse, gratefully accepting it. "Thanks," he said, unscrewing the cap and chugging the entire bottle. Irene and Felix watched, marveling. "That thirsty, huh? Poor guy." Suddenly, Irene remembered to introduce him. "Right, Felix, this is Andrew." Her words made Anthony choke on the water, coughing dryly. He corrected her again, exasperated. "It's Anthony. Why do you keep calling me by a weird name?" Irene's eyes widened. It sounded similar. Trying to recover, she asked, "Can you stand up in this condition?" Felix chimed in. "Looks like he can only sit and breathe for now." Resigned, Felix said, "Oh well," and bent down to carry the boy on his back. "Just lean on me comfortably." The gesture made Anthony feel a bit awkward but deeply touched. "What's this? Are you an angel?" Seeing he was alone, Irene asked, "Where are the others?" Mentioning this made Anthony feel deeply uneasy. The others might still be alive. "We have to save them before it's too late." Irene felt a vague sense of dread at his words. "Save them?" Felix's face darkened as he said, "I hear something coming from the island. It sounds like screams." All three turned their eyes toward the island, where dark, ominous wisps of black mist emanated, creating a terrifying, deathly atmosphere. Feeling scared, Irene instinctively moved closer, grabbing Felix's arm, which made him flinch in embarrassment. Anthony, helpless, thought to himself, in front of someone who's practically dying, "You two are still being lovey-dovey?" That day was a beautiful one, with waves gently lapping, dazzling sunlight, clear skies, and a favorable breeze. A large ship set sail toward Camel Island. On board was Anthony, along with other companions. "At this speed, we'll reach Camel Island in no time," someone said. "This job's dangerous, but you're still so excited, huh, Anthony?" He grinned, full of enthusiasm. "Of course. How could I not be? This gig's gonna make us a fortune." At that moment, everyone felt something strange. The wind stopped blowing. Everything around them grew eerily quiet. "What's that? Why'd the wind stop?" Anthony picked up a compass to check, only to be stunned as the needle spun wildly, refusing to settle. He immediately realized something was wrong. "Something's off," he said. The sea began to churn violently, and the surroundings grew darker. Back to the present. Anthony, ravenous, was devouring food while recounting the entire story to the heroine. "When I woke up, I found myself in a castle," he said, eating heartily. The heroine flinched slightly. "That's quite a twist." She poured a glass of water and handed it to him. He continued, "I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember being swept into the sea, but my clothes were soaked, so I must have fallen in. During that time, I kept feeling dizzy, like something had possessed me. Then, suddenly, I passed out in the forest." Curious, Irene pressed on. "What happened next?" Anthony lifted the glass of water to drink, his face showing worry. The people there didn't seem sane. They were alive, but it was like they'd lost their minds. Something terrifying was going on. I had a feeling I shouldn't eat the food there. After a few days, I couldn't take it anymore, so I decided to die and jumped into the sea." He slammed the glass down on the table. "I remember there were 2 people, so I was saved. As for the others, I don't know." With that, he continued to eat ravenously. In short, that place is bizarre and frightening. Both Irene and Felix fell into a heavy silence. She whispered to him, "It sounds like it's really the work of spirits, not some prank, right?" Felix replied, "Maybe. Let me go talk to the others traveling with us." Irene, utterly dejected and listless, slumped onto the table, thinking, either we hit the mark or miss entirely. This doesn't seem any better than Neely's. Isn't there a chance the spirits could be life-giving or healing? Both Felix and Antony were taken aback by her reaction. Antony spoke up, "Don't slump your face on the table like that." Irene lifted her head wearily and said, "Why is this place full of lunatics? Am I going crazy too?" Antony immediately shot back, "I think you probably are." Infuriated, she retorted, "You hopeless little brat." He shouted, "What? I'm eating here, so why are you yapping at me?" The scene shifts. Irene, despondent, said to Claudia, "So, it feels too dangerous. Maybe we should pull back." Claudia remained silent for a moment, her demeanor like thorny purple roses, cold and proud. She countered, "If we back off now, when will we try again? We need to find the spirit before those three make a move. Besides, we can't be sure the next spirit we find won't be dangerous too." Claudia continued, "I'd rather fight my whole life than live in despair, achieving nothing." The heroine was deeply surprised by her response, thinking to herself, "Claudia is so determined." She smiled brightly, like blooming flowers, and replied, "All right, then let's prepare thoroughly and set out. If it's with you, Claudia, I'm sure we'll be fine." Today, the ship began its journey out to sea. It was another beautiful sunny day, with gentle waves and favorable winds. The helmsman raised his index finger to test the wind. Someone spoke up, Are you okay with this?" The helmsman turned, glanced back, then looked away and replied, "Humph, about life and death? I've heard that question too many times from passengers before. Every client asks the same thing. We're mercenaries. If we kept worrying, how could we get any work done?" The heroine and Claudia turned toward the source of the voice. From another spot, someone added, "Even memory-erasing magic, if mishandled even slightly, can cause serious consequences. We're always prepared to die. If things get dangerous, feel free to abandon us." The helmsman interrupted, sorry to cut into the conversation, but the buildings on the island are starting to come into view. Everyone's eyes turned toward the island. As they drew closer, they saw large, white buildings, old and crumbling. Felix observed the surroundings. That architectural style isn't used in modern times anymore. The patterns on the rooftops are symbols of a folk religion that once had many followers in the past. He added, "So it's not nature reclaiming the land." The heroine, utterly confused, asked, "Does that mean time has reversed? Is that even possible?" Suddenly, a loud crash echoed, shaking everything around and startling the heroine so much that she lost her balance and stumbled. Fortunately, Felix was quick to catch her. "Are you okay?" he asked. The image of the two embracing was incredibly romantic, as if 100 flowers were blooming around them. Blushing, she stammered, "Why yes." At that moment, Felix realized he was holding the heroine and, utterly embarrassed, quickly let go. Both felt awkward and instinctively kept their distance. "Sorry," he said. "It's okay," she replied, quickly regaining her composure. "But what just happened? Was it the power of a spirit?" She cautiously scanned her surroundings. A woman was holding a ball containing trembling spirits. "The spirits are all shaking. This must be a powerful one," she observed. People around began to murmur. "Is it an illusion?" someone asked. "It's not magic, so I don't know how it works, but it's definitely not an illusion," another replied. Felix spoke up, "I'll try to enter using instant teleportation." But he was stopped. "You can't get in. That space is distorted by an invisible force, making a chasm. No one can enter." Someone asked, "Distorted space? How do you explain that?" Felix replied, "It's hard to describe, but think of it as another dimension." A young man with a quiver of arrows on his back decided, "I'll try shooting an arrow." He knocked an arrow, drew his bow, and fired. However, a wall suddenly appeared, and the arrow shattered into pieces upon impact. Everyone was shocked and buzzing with questions. One person, frightened, asked, "How did you know about this? Who are you?" Felix, with a wry expression, answered, "I'm just someone who thinks too much." Irene turned around, about to say, "What should we do now?" but her words were cut short by a gasp of panic. She saw Claudia standing on the ship's railing. Claudia! Irene reached out, trying to pull her back, shouting, "What are you doing up there?" Her heart pounded loudly, and her blood felt like it froze. Time seemed to stop, the world around her darkening. She stared in shock as a loud splash echoed. Claudia had jumped into the sea without hesitation, right before her eyes. On the sandy shore, waves crashed, carried by the blowing wind. Our heroine, dazed, woke up, groaning in discomfort. Ugh! She didn't know what had happened. What's going on? It felt like she had fallen into an undefined void, surrounded by darkness, bound by something like chains. Her body couldn't move, as if restrained, not by objects, but by flesh. She sensed her surroundings more clearly. A pair of arms was holding her. Instinctively, she fumbled around with her eyes still closed. Startled, she snapped awake, overwhelmed with panic, repeating, "No way, no way." Looking ahead, she could now see everything clearly. Before her was Felix, eyes closed, radiant like blooming roses, sparkling in the light. It was Felix. She gazed, captivated and entranced, at his handsome face, a flawless beauty with no bad angles. Now's not the time to swoon. She squirmed, trying to break free from his embrace, but no matter how hard she tried, it was futile. He held her too tightly. Despite using all her strength, she couldn't escape. Giving up, she sighed. How is he so strong? Deciding to change tactics, she started calling out to him, poking his face to wake him. Finally, he groaned in annoyance, "Ugh," and slowly opened his eyes, dazed. He caught a sweet fragrance, followed by a girl's voice. "Felix, can you hear me? Do you remember what happened?" Still not fully awake, Felix blinked groggily and responded instinctively, What's that?" He sat up, holding her close, gazing at her intently. "Are we talking about last night?" He let out a soft sigh, resting his head on her shoulder, his hand running through her soft brown hair. He kept nuzzling against her, making Irene incredibly embarrassed. Her face turned bright red, and she was utterly flustered, thinking, "We haven't even kissed yet." She called out, "Felix!" He snapped out of it, flustered himself, and gently helped her down. "It's real. I'm sorry," he said, covering his face in embarrassment, repeating, "I'm really sorry," though a bit shaken. Irene replied, "It's okay," thinking to herself, "Something like this happened on the train, and it's driving me crazy." She asked, "But why did you hold me like that?" Felix, sheepish, answered, "Probably because I was afraid you'd get hurt before I passed out, so I held you. Honestly, it was unconscious, so I'm not sure why either." Irene checked herself and found no injuries. "Thank you. Because of you, I'm completely fine," she said. Felix stood up and extended his hand to her. "Shall we go explore the surroundings together?" "Yes," she replied, reaching out to take his hand. A grand white building loomed before them. "This is the building we saw from outside the island, isn't it?" Irene said. "It seems the path to this place is the sea." "Exactly," Felix replied. The two stood at the forest's edge, gazing at the building. The surrounding scenery and temperature felt different from the outside. It was like spring here. Irene shivered. "It's so cold." "Well, you're soaked, so no wonder you're freezing," Felix noted. In the distance, children's laughter echoed. Both turned toward the sound, spotting two children playing. "Their clothing. It's from about 4,000 years ago," Irene remarked, surprised. She turned to Felix. "How do you know that?" He answered, "Larry's soul fragment told me. It's a shard with a mix of dark purple and pink. Incredibly mystical." Irene was astonished. "No way. You can talk to it?" Felix sighed. "Its mouth never stops, so it's exhausting." A sudden shout startled them. "Outsiders! Outsiders!" One of the children, holding a basket of golden, fragrant bread and a bottle of wine, approached with fresh clothes, smiling. Curious, Irene asked, "Why are you giving us these?" The children replied, "Eat and put them on." "Thank you." Irene hesitated. "Can I change first?" Instantly, the children's eyes turned cold and menacing. "No," they said. "You must eat first. We need to be sure you've eaten." Felix knelt gently before one child, saying softly, "Thanks to you, we'll escape the cold and hunger. You're so kind." His warm, flower-like smile made the children blush slightly. They glanced aside, stammering. Well, it's just our job. Felix continued. Have you kids eaten yet? Both children flinched. No, we don't need to eat, they replied. Felix cut them off gently. Don't say that. You need to eat well to grow tall like me. I don't need this food. I'm grown already. With that, he picked up the warm, fragrant bread from the basket. Here you eat. Fresh, delicious bread right in front of you. The children looked uneasy, unsure what to do, exchanging glances and swallowing hard. How did you think to offer us food? One asked. Felix explained. When the city lord invites outsiders in, you always offer them food and clothes. Why invite them in? As the children nibbled on the bread, they answered. Because Elifia likes it that way. Irene, puzzled, asked. Elifia? The children responded as if it were obvious. Everyone knows Elifia. You don't? He's the spirit of life. He loves festivals. So every day is a festival. Irene's eyes lit up. The spirit of life? Then Claudia can finally form a contract with the spirit. The four parted ways, the children running off, shouting, We're going. See you again. Felix and Irene waved back. Be careful. Irene then asked, Are those kids still alive? Felix's expression grew somber. They died 4,000 years ago. No matter how far you turn back time, the dead can't come back. Irene pressed, But you said it's not an illusion. Felix replied, It's not, but they're still just hollow shadows, empty shells without souls. Someone's trying to hold onto those shadows. As he spoke, a gust of wind carrying leaves swept through, and the surroundings darkened around Claudia Chamberlain. She didn't know where she was, helplessly calling out, Rin, big brother. No one answered. Was she truly alone? Suddenly, someone called her name, Claudia. She spun around and saw none other than Duke Limburg. Why was he here? And why did he say she had walked into hell herself? While Claudia was still reeling from confusion, Duke Limburg relentlessly berated her. With cruel indifference, he said she only knew how to rely on Lady Amber, and that her stubbornness would drive everyone around her away. Claudia was about to retort when she received devastating news. Felix was dead. She collapsed, unable to believe it was true. A voice whispered in her ear, You're always so kind, so I don't need to try too hard. Prince Lucas appeared, mocking her as a weak, helpless, and pitiful girl. Stunned, Claudia couldn't find words to counter him. The Duke continued, urging her to stop resisting and join them. Tears welled in Claudia's eyes, but her small lips uttered a firm no, clenching her fists unconsciously. She resolved to change, to stop depending on others and become stronger and more resolute. The Duke laughed at her words, intrigued, curious to see how she would fare on her own. Prince Lucas, however, scoffed, insisting that no matter what she did, her weak nature would never change. With that, both the Duke and the Prince vanished, leaving Claudia in what felt like hell. Just when she thought she'd escaped their cruel taunts, a voice echoed in the eerie, silent darkness of the place. You can't protect anyone anymore. You're just a pretty doll, useless. No one needs you to try. Claudia, numb, responded, You again. The voice didn't reply, but she continued, Because of you, everyone will die. Why do you even need to live? The voice delivered its final blow. The only one who should die is you, Claudia. Why haven't you died yet? Speechless and hollow, Claudia trudged forward, her footsteps echoing with a faint clop-clop, breaking the silence of the hellish place. Scene shift to Lady Irene. Lady Irene stood in a beautiful forest, worried about Claudia, unsure where she was or if she was safe. A rustling in the foliage snapped her out of her thoughts. Felix appeared, his handsome face adorned with a radiant smile that seemed to light up the entire scene, captivating everyone around. Even Lady Amber, witnessing it, felt her cheeks flush, her eyes sparkling strangely. In her mind, she thought, Oh, holy gods, is this what the sun spirit would look like? Still dazed by Felix's charm, she didn't notice him approach until he asked with concern, Are you okay? Snapping back to reality, Amber quickly assured him she was fine, trying to hide her flustered state. To change the subject, she suggested they go meet the city lord. Felix agreed without objection but proposed they eat something first. He pulled out a bag of pastries he'd prepared earlier. Surprised, Amber asked when he'd gotten them. Felix explained, Before we boarded the ship, I stored them in my magic bag. He handed her a pastry. Amber took a small bite, expecting sweetness, but it was surprisingly salty. After a few more bites, she found it wasn't bad at all. Felix burst out laughing at Amber's adorable reaction. She suddenly remembered she had brought some items for the journey. After rummaging for a while, she pulled out no less than 10 magical rings, filling both her hands. Seeing Felix's stunned expression, she quickly defended herself, saying, "Small but mighty, you know." Then she asked if he wanted to take one. Felix paused to think, but then gently reached for Amber's hand, taking a magical ring from her index finger. He smiled and said, "I'll take this one, all right?" and slipped the ring onto his ring finger. Amber's heart was already racing from Felix's sun-god-like handsomeness earlier, and now it threatened to stop entirely at the sight of him taking her ring and putting it on his ring finger. To make matters worse, he looked at her and smiled again, making her want to sue him for constantly giving her heart palpitations. Amid the open, refreshing scenery of the forest, with its lush greenery and occasional cool breezes, Amber felt a sense of ease in her new outfit, which was incredibly comfortable. However, she was also a bit embarrassed because it revealed quite a bit of skin. Noticing her discomfort, Felix teased, "Is it because the outfit's a bit revealing that you keep looking away?" Flustered, she stammered that it wasn't the case. But Felix didn't know the real reason she was acting this way was because of his otherworldly charm. After walking a bit further, a magnificent white castle appeared before them. Seeing the grandiose structure, Felix knew they had arrived at the right place. "Time to meet the lord of the city," he said. Inside the castle, there were many people, men and women alike, dancing joyfully, playing music, and mingling without restraint. Felix and Amber were astonished by how much more open and lively everyone was compared to what they had expected. While they hesitated, unsure of how to approach or greet anyone, someone noticed their presence. "Oh, look! New faces!" Startled, Amber instinctively stepped behind Felix. He, in turn, raised his arm to shield and protect her. A young woman with light brown skin and neatly tied-up hair approached them with a warm smile. "Welcome to Alioth City," she said cheerfully, carrying a tray with 2 glasses of water to offer Felix and Amber. They accepted the glasses, and Amber thanked her, noting that the woman didn't seem malicious. Felix spoke up, asking, "How can we meet the lord of this city?" Amber was caught off guard by his directness, so much so that she accidentally dropped the glass of water she had just received, shattering it. The young woman seemed equally surprised by Felix's blunt question and responded, "What do you mean?" Felix flashed his divinely handsome smile, instantly becoming radiant and drawing the attention of everyone around. Amber stared at him, thinking to herself, "I'm freaking out because this place feels so suspicious, and yet you're drawing even more attention to us." While Amber was lost in her thoughts, a man approached Felix and said, "You haven't eaten anything yet, have you? Why not? Food, drinks, even plays, everything's free here," he went on, as if enticing them. "You don't need to work here, just have fun." Seeing Felix remain silent, Amber stepped in to respond, "Who in the world would refuse free stuff? We're just so grateful for the city lord's kindness that we want to meet and thank him in person." As soon as she finished speaking, Amber felt every pair of eyes in the room turn toward her, making her feel awkward and uneasy. To ease the tension, Felix reached out, pulled her close to his chest and said, "We've already enjoyed your food and drinks. We're just wondering why the city lord, who's created such joy for us, isn't here with us. We'd love to share a drink with him." Before Felix could finish speaking, the man from earlier interrupted, "This is what happens when we let outsiders in." Amber, hearing this, pouted and retorted, "What's wrong with just having a drink?" The man continued, "Even if you offer wine, the city lord might not even notice a lady like you." Realizing she was being misunderstood, Amber snapped back angrily, "That's not what I meant." Suddenly, a voice rang out, sounding displeased. "Why is it so noisy?" All eyes turned toward the source of the voice. A man with deep green hair, dressed distinctly unlike anyone else in the city, appeared with an imposing aura. He muttered, "Notice what?" Then his gaze fell on Felix, and he exclaimed, "What the hell is this?" He stormed toward Felix, his face tinged with anger, causing everyone in the city to shrink back in fear. Seeing the man's approach, Felix stepped in front of Amber to protect her. In the man's eyes, he saw something unsettling. Deep within Felix was the presence of a demonic soul with red eyes, smirking defiantly. The man shouted, "You damned demon! How dare you set foot in here, you filthy fiend? Felix was taken aback. He had used magic to conceal his presence. So how had this man detected him, let alone noticed the demon within? As if reading Felix's thoughts, the man sneered. The stench of that vile demon reeks so strongly I could smell it from a mile away. If you've come to my domain to die, I'll gladly grant your wish. Arista will be pleased. Felix, puzzled, thought to himself, isn't he the city lord? Or maybe he's not the city lord at all. He responded, you seem to really hate demons. So do I. Hearing Felix claim to hate demons, the man found it laughable and scoffed. Hating yourself, are you? At the same time, he tightened his grip, as if ready to strike. To prove he wasn't a demon, Felix cast a spell. He spoke. Can a demon use magic like this? The man retorted. It depends on who's wielding it. He then added, let's see what you're capable of. He began to stretch and flex, preparing for a fight with Felix. If you've got the guts, run. I'll hunt you down and finish you. With that, he flashed a grin, revealing sharp, menacing teeth, his demeanor turning ferocious and terrifying. A sudden burst of thunder and lightning erupted, creating a deafening roar and a blinding flash that illuminated the entire castle hall. The scene shifts to the hellish realm where Claudia was trapped. After walking for what felt like an eternity, exhausted and drained, she collapsed onto the cold, dark ground. The mysterious voice echoed again, urging her to give up. See, you've barely walked in this darkness, and you've already fallen. Stop trying to get up. Though her body was weak and devoid of strength, the voice continued to taunt her. Why waste your energy? Just pray and wait for someone to save you. Pushed to her limit and unable to endure any longer, Claudia snapped. Shut up! While you're watching me, I'm watching you too. You want me to be nothing but a parasite staying still forever? Even if you drag me down, it won't do you any good. There will be days when I'm helpless and fall, but I'll still climb to heights beyond your imagination. And you? Do you even dare to go anywhere? She shouted in anger, finally unleashing the frustration she had been holding back. Breathing a sigh of relief, she felt lighter. I can't see ahead. Can you lend me some light? She said aloud. I can clearly hear the sound of water. Are you there? Nyx? I feel a fresh breeze around me. Sylphid? Earthworm, if you can hear even a little, can you guide me? If anyone's here, please answer me. No one responded. Claudia, resigned, muttered to herself. Of course, in an illusion like this, there wouldn't be any spirits. Just as she was wallowing in despair, the area around her suddenly lit up, banishing the oppressive darkness. The light revealed the surroundings clearly, and Claudia rejoiced, knowing a spirit had answered her plea. Salamander, so you're here, she exclaimed. But then she hesitated, sensing something off. Wait, is Salamander really this powerful? As she pondered, a rhythmic clopping sound caught her attention. Who's there? She called out. Suddenly, the graceful figure of a woman appeared, her entire being cloaked in a mysterious shade of purple. Her long, flowing hair and even her clothing radiating that enigmatic hue. She approached Claudia and answered her question. I came because I heard your voice, little girl. Claudia felt that the woman's voice sounded familiar, as if she had heard it somewhere before. She responded, Was it you who called me here? The woman confirmed, Yes, it was I who called you. Still curious, Claudia pressed on. Have you been watching me this whole time? The woman replied, I wanted to wait until you asked for help, but I still hoped you could overcome it on your own. Claudia asked, Why do that? The woman answered, So that when you face difficulties you can't escape from, I can reach out to you like this to help you move forward. With that, she extended her hand and helped Claudia to her feet. You've done very well. The struggles and the hope you've felt will one day become your foundation. Claudia paused for a moment, perhaps because she finally felt someone acknowledging her efforts. It brought her some comfort. She asked, Are you an independent spirit? Instead of answering directly, the woman turned the question back on her. What if I am? Claudia eagerly grabbed both of the woman's hands and pleaded loudly. Then please, form a contract with me. If you agree, I'll do my very best to ensure you never suffer. The woman hesitated, unsure how to respond to Claudia. But Claudia pressed on, trying to convince the spirit. Even if I don't know your situation, you need me, don't you? If you form a contract with me, I'll do anything you want. The spirit replied. A human child wouldn't say something like that. She let out a soft laugh. Hearing this, Claudia quickly continued, I'm sorry, was I too rude? But I'm serious. Isn't someone with my ability to attract spirits worthy of being chosen? Claudia's voice grew somber. No spirit has ever agreed to form a contract with me, which is why I'm here. The woman asked, so you came all this way with a purpose? Claudia nodded. Yes, I'm out of options. Impressed by Claudia's determination, the spirit exclaimed, that's truly remarkable. I don't mean to disturb you spirits. If you form a contract with me, I'll leave on my own, Claudia said earnestly. Why are you so determined to form a contract? The spirit asked, curious about what drove Claudia to pursue this despite the hardships. Claudia answered, there's someone I want to protect, and more importantly, I want to stand on my own. Moved by Claudia's conviction, the spirit told her, follow me, and turned to walk forward. Forming a contract with a spirit isn't about standing alone. It's about becoming companions who walk together. You may not know this, but spirits can be as fragile as humans. I wanted to see what kind of person you are. If it's you, perhaps you can fulfill my request. You were testing me? Claudia asked. The spirit replied, it's been a long time since I've seen a child with your ability to attract spirits. If you feel upset, I apologize. There's a child I can no longer reach. I want him to overcome his struggles on his own. As she finished speaking, a radiant exit appeared before them, leading to a magnificent scene. The woman removed a necklace from around her neck. Its pendant was a sparkling sapphire stone, shimmering with a mix of grayish blue and purple light, both beautiful and mysterious. Claudia stared in awe at her actions. The woman looked at Claudia with a gentle smile, her eyes filled with trust, as if placing all her faith in her. Reach out to that child for me, will you? He'll help you in return. At Felix and Irene's location, the two were struggling against the terrifying attacks from that man. The chaotic battle created massive explosions, reducing the fortress to rubble. From within the smoke and dust of the blast, the man shot out like an arrow, closing in on Felix and Irene in an instant. Fortunately, Felix was quick to cast a magic spell, successfully striking the man and injuring him, temporarily weakening his assault. At this moment, Irene, still in Felix's arms, spoke up. You hit him, Felix replied. Practicing magic again like back at the old mansion was worth the effort. As soon as he finished speaking, he coughed up a mouthful of blood, likely from overusing magic, causing his body to collapse from the backlash. Yet he still worried for Irene. I'm fine, but I might fall, he muttered weakly, gripping her tightly. Irene confirmed, his recovery speed is insane. I don't know if his real body is on the island. We have to find it. Hearing Felix and Irene mention him, the man spoke up, getting bored now. He used magic to make the surrounding trees grow uncontrollably, their branches multiplying and lunging to seize the two. The game of chase ends here, he shouted, dashing toward them. In that critical moment, Felix shielded Amber, but he couldn't evade in time. The man's strike landed, critically injuring him, sending his body crashing to the ground. Seeing Felix seemingly defeated, the man dispelled his magic and approached. Though a demon, you still have some magic power, so you're the one who made a contract with the demon? The man mused. If so, he's just a pure magic user. Doesn't matter. He glanced at Felix's fallen form, and Irene immediately stepped in front of him. The man glared at her. Move aside, human girl. Despite being intimidated by his oppressive aura, Amber stood firm. I won't move. Her defiance angered him. Do you want me to kill you first? He threatened. I can guess why you hate demons, Irene said. This island was used as a gateway to the demon realm, taking everything from you, right? His rage flared further. If you know, then step aside. But Irene refused. Felix sealed the demon away to prevent such tragedies from repeating. He's a hero who saved countless lives. The man scoffed. Then he should die along with the demon inside him. Once dead, he'll be revered as a true hero. Humans are clear about this. If he keeps the demon, they'll see him as a monster, not a savior. Killing him would make everyone happy. He smirked, satisfied with his reasoning. Irene persisted, looking him in the eye. Is that what happened to you? Or someone you loved? Were they sacrificed like you said? His expression remained cold. That's none of your concern. He summoned thorny vines that slithered toward Irene and Felix. Desperate, Irene tried to sway him. There are people responsible for Felix becoming like this. If I tell you where they are, will you go kill them instead? Her words seemed meaningless to him. The vines kept advancing. Why should I? He retorted. Then why kill Felix? She shot back. Because killing him destroys the demon inside, he answered flatly. But why kill him and ignore those who caused this? That's no different from the people 4,000 years ago who failed to stop the demons. Irene challenged, unafraid of provoking him. His patience snapped. A branch shot out, wrapping around her throat and lifting her off the ground while other vines coiled around Felix. Enough talk, he growled. Any last words? Struggling against the choking grip, Irene gasped, I'll headbutt you. Her defiance enraged him further. The branch tightened. Then die. Just as Irene was struggling to breathe, on the verge of death in this forest, Felix suddenly lunged forward, shattering the branches that had been constricting them both. He barely managed to save her from the Reaper's scythe at the last possible moment. Cradling her in his arms, he gently set her down in a safe spot. Irene, thank you, she whispered. But then she caught a strange glint in his eyes, nothing like Felix's usual gentle gaze. A chilling realization struck her. This isn't Felix. The man seemed to have noticed long ago. Damn demon, he roared, finally showing your true face. Felix ignored his words, coldly conjuring a bow with magic. He took aim and loosed an arrow with such force that it tore through the air, streaking toward the man. Though he dodged, the arrow still grazed him, severing his arm clean off before exploding in the distance with unimaginable force. The sheer devastation made it clear. Had the arrow struck true, the man would have been obliterated. Before he could even process the shock, Felix was already in front of him, bow drawn and ready to fire a second shot. The man barely had time to curse, "You bastard!" before the next arrow was released. This time it hit its mark. Trees exploded into splinters, dust and debris filling the air in a scene of utter ruin. Irene stood frozen, speechless. Only then did the demon within Felix turn its attention to her. Its cold gaze flicked down, sizing her up. Irene, trembling, could only whisper, "Felix!" Smoke and dust swirled around them, obscuring everything. Kneeling on the ground, she stared up at him with fearful eyes. Felix? But the figure standing before her wasn't him. Laraj. The moment she saw those shadowed eyes locked onto her, she knew. Laraj reached out, his voice dark and mocking. "So we finally meet properly, Irene Amber." He leaned down, bracing a hand on his hip, his towering frame blocking out the light. "Because of you," he murmured, "my heart aches." Irene, confused, lifted a hand toward him. "Huh!" He seized her wrist, yanking her up before pulling her flush against him. One hand held hers aloft while the other gripped her waist possessively. Irene stumbled forward, crashing into his chest. She instinctively braced her hands against him as Laraj growled, "Stop hurting me." Before she could react, she looked up in shock, only to find him scowling down at her. "Quit smiling so much," he grumbled. "Better yet, stop smiling altogether." With Felix's face but those unfamiliar eyes, Laraj stared at Irene, who now blinked up at him in utter confusion. "What are you even saying?" she asked. His cheeks flushed slightly at her expression. Then, abruptly, he shoved her away, taking a step back himself. His hands gripped her shoulders as he barked, "Why the hell would I want some brat like you?" Irene could only gape at him, stunned. Laraj exhaled sharply, closing his eyes in resignation. "Forget it. Just drop it." But Irene, irritated by his cryptic words and rough handling, frowned and snapped, "What do you mean, drop it? Finish what you were saying." His hands still rested on her shoulders before he finally released her with a mocking chuckle. "Heh!" He pressed a palm to his own chest, smirking. "Not a brat, huh? More like a squeaky little mouse." Irene bristled. "What the hell is wrong with you? Just spit it out." Irene rushed forward, grabbing at his body in panic. "Wait, Felix. Don't tell me you've completely devoured his soul." Laraj flinched, his face flushing red as he awkwardly stumbled back. Then, with a sharp motion, he shoved her hands away and wrapped his arms around Felix's body, his expression a mix of embarrassment and irritation. "Don't touch me," he snapped. "He's just temporarily out of commission." Irene froze, clenching her fists as she stood before him, eyes burning with suspicion. You've never fully taken over before. What's different this time? Laraj averted his gaze, his voice dropping to a mutter. It's nothing serious. We just made a little agreement. Before he could finish, Irene lunged forward, grabbing his collar and shaking him violently. An agreement? What kind of agreement? Laraj grimaced, trying to pry her off. Why's your attitude with me so different from how you act with him? Night and day, I swear. When he didn't answer properly, Irene's fury exploded. You shameless bastard. You only get to walk around safely because of Felix's body. She tightened her grip, yelling directly in his face. Spit it out. What did you agree to? Cornered. Laraj squeezed his eyes shut and blurted out. It's a confidential, unconditional pact with the demon. Happy now? Irene released him, her face paling. Her voice trembled. Then, what happened to Felix? Laraj pressed a hand to his chest, wincing. Tchow. Hey, quit making that face. My heart hurts. Irene stared at him, cold and detached. That's called guilt biting you. Guilt? Laraj roared, his face twisting in outrage. Since when do demons have guilt? What even is that? Irene flinched at his outburst, covering her ears. Why are you so mad all of a sudden? Laraj dragged a hand down his face, exhaling sharply. Then, peering through his fingers with icy, murderous eyes, he hissed, Listen here, you brat. You're way too bold for your own good. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper as he raised a hand toward her. A weakling like you? I could erase you with a flick of my finger. Irene stood frozen in fear as Laraj raised his hand toward her. Her body refused to move. But then, to her complete shock, he gently wiped away her tears instead. Before she could react, Laraj clenched his fist and muttered, Damn this troublesome body. Still dazed, Irene thought for a moment she'd seen the real Felix. Laraj tilted his head back, resting a hand casually behind his neck. Relax, I just took a little nibble of his soul. No big deal. Irene stepped closer, eyes narrowing. How much is a little? Dropping his hand, he met her gaze and answered quietly, A quarter. Irene's world shattered. The image of her kind Felix bleeding internally from the demon's bite overwhelmed her. A choked sob escaped before she burst into uncontrollable tears. Laraj looked genuinely startled. That amount won't kill him. Stop crying already, Dash. Rin. Big bro. Both turned to see Claudia running toward them, waving excitedly with one hand while clutching a small chest in the other. You're both safe, she cheered. Irene immediately rushed into her arms, sobbing incoherently. Claw. You're okay. Claudia laughed and spun her around. I missed you too, Rin. Then she paused, noticing Irene's outfit. Why are you dressed so weirdly? Still sniffling, Irene tried to explain, only to recall the recent horrors. Fresh tears welled up. Claudia's smile faded. Everything shook violently on my way here. Was that related? Irene nodded rapidly between sobs. Yes, it was all fake. This is the island's true form. As Laraj watched silently from Felix's body, Irene recounted everything to Claudia. So, Claudia finally said, everything we saw before was an illusion. This is the island's true image. Claudia held the small chest in her hands, her face lighting up with understanding. I think I get it now, she said cheerfully, pointing forward. Let's go make a contract with the spirit. Irene blinked in confusion. The spirit? She asked hesitantly. Claudia nodded firmly. Yeah. Laraj stood silently observing their exchange, choosing not to interrupt. Then Irene pointed at him nervously, stammering, but we just defeated him. Laraj looked equally bewildered as he turned to Claudia. She tilted her head in confusion. Huh? No way. Still clutching the small chest, she raised it up with a confident smile. The spirit's heart is right here. Irene scratched her cheek, perplexed. Wait, really? The spirit has a physical form. Laraj folded his arms, listening intently as Claudia explained. To leave the spirit's realm, it needs a physical vessel. I didn't know that, Irene admitted hesitantly, eyeing the small chest wrapped in thorny vines. Claudia continued her explanation. You could say the price of freedom is obtaining a flesh and blood body. At this point, Laraj suddenly raised his hand with a sly grin. Hey, if we threaten to stab its heart, the spirit will have to show itself, right? Only now did Claudia seem to truly notice Laraj. She fixed him with an intense stare while still holding the chest, making Laraj return her gaze with equal confusion. Then she frowned and demanded bluntly, "Who are you?" She opened the small chest, revealing a red crystal heart that pulsed rhythmically inside. As Claudia closed the lid, a haunting voice echoed in her mind. You who seek to contract with the spirit, are you the one who reduced your brother to this wretched state? The accusatory tone made Claudia's expression darken. The voice continued its mocking tone. You've finally lost your mind, Claudia. In your single-minded pursuit of a spirit contract, you've destroyed your only brother. The words coiled around her consciousness like grasping vines. You swore to protect him, didn't you? In the darkness, a beam of light shone upon the person, he remarked coldly. So you've finally gone mad. Claudia slowly opened her eyes. He was manipulating her again, all because of her obsession with forming a spirit contract. You've already destroyed your only brother, the voice echoed relentlessly in her mind. You, who swore to protect him. Claudia gritted her teeth, fury boiling inside her. What the hell is wrong with you? She screamed, jerking her head up. Then, she paused, remembering Irene's smile and her brother's face. Muttering under her breath, Claudia seethed at what that spirit had done to Irene and her brother. It makes me furious. The world around her flickered with faint light. She recalled the beautiful woman Arista and the necklace she had given her. Then her thoughts turned to Elifia. But that spirit must have his own reasons. So, I'll go meet him to confirm. With resolve, Claudia's body radiated a divine glow, brilliant and resolute. I will choose the spirit I contract with. In her hand, she tightly clutched a small chest. Somewhere near a grave, Elifia sat curled up when suddenly, a voice made him jolt. What are you doing here? He spun around, eyes widening. Why you look like that damn demon I met earlier. Claudia smiled gently, tilting her head. Around her, thorned purple roses bloomed. A silent warning. Watch your mouth. Because of you, my brother lost part of his soul to that demon. Elifia glared, voice sharp. So, did you come for revenge? Behind her back, Claudia still held the small chest. She lifted it slowly, her tone soft but firm. You know what this is, don't you? You lost it. At the sight of it, Elifia panicked. Give it back. He lunged, but Claudia swiftly pulled it away. No. Wondering how I got it. She smirked. Only you and this city's lord knew its location. His expression darkened. Don't you dare speak of her. Vines surged behind him, reaching for Claudia. Then he froze. His eyes locked onto the necklace around her neck. Wait, how do you have that? Calmly, Claudia pointed at herself. Let's make this official. I'm your new master. She lowered her hand, gaze steady. Elifia, you will form a contract with me. We're leaving this island. He scoffed. Why would I? Then, Claudia uttered two words. Finello Merchant Guild. His pupils shrank. Rage twisted his face. You're furious they got close to the grave, aren't you? She pressed. That anger's been building for a while. Pausing, she offered the deal. I'll help you get revenge. Elifia stared at her in bewilderment as she declared. I could have done all this myself. She pressed further. You've lived on this island your whole life, so you know nothing of the outside world, do you? Her words struck him like a gust of wind, rustling the leaves around them. Elifia's face twisted as he listened. I'll hand that merchant guild over to you, she offered. He turned away, muttering under his breath. If I leave, this island will sink. Claudia paused. Sink. I've barely kept it afloat, he admitted bitterly. It should have drowned 4,000 years ago. The Emerald Island floated serenely on the sea's surface. Claudia studied it, then asked softly, Did you do this? For Arista? Her gaze drifted to the wildflowers placed atop a grave. Alifia's voice wavered. I used my power to craft her a body. So real, so delicate. But then, she vanished. His hand reached out, trembling, as if to touch a memory. Her face flushed with warmth, her back turned as she walked away. He had stretched out his hand, desperate to stop her. Claudia's voice cut through his thoughts. Do you really not know why she never appeared before you again? She answered for him, gentle but firm. She wanted you to leave this place, without regrets. Ilifia froze. The image of Arista walking away, heartbroken, unresolved, flashed before him. Claudia continued, Death is what makes life precious. Fake flowers may mimic real ones, but they'll never bear fruit. People say lost things are the most beautiful. You're a spirit, so you don't understand human lives. But you know nature's laws, don't you? Around them, vibrant blossoms bloomed endlessly, spun from his own hands. He knew she was right. Ilifia bowed his head, silent. Claudia smiled. Even if all that remains is dust, you must let go. Protect her memory, but move forward. In his eyes, Arisa's shadow flickered as he looked at Claudia, still holding the small chest. Then, Claudia reached out, offering her hand. She knew it was time to disappear, and you, the one left behind, must learn to bury the past. Tears fell freely from Alifia's eyes. As grief racked him, Claudia brushed his hair aside and whispered, That is the way of humans. His tears fell as if merging with the ocean beyond the island. The sea churned violently. Thunderous roars split the sky as the island began to sink. Water erupted in chaotic sprays before, with a final OM. It vanished entirely. The impact sent massive waves surging upward, a towering column of water crashing back into the abyss. Laraj, standing beside Claudia, eyed her sharply. Where's that spirit? She answered plainly, I doubt he'd want to watch this. Ilifia was curled in a corner of the ship, face hidden. Claudia glanced at him and sighed. Didn't I say to cover your head once the spell lifted? Laraj's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? You're just a human. Don't order me around. Claudia's smile turned icy. Oh? Then a demon like you shouldn't spew human-like nonsense either. She scoffed. Ignorant fool. Laraj, for once, obediently pulled his hood up and shut his mouth. Amused, Claudia patted his shoulder. With a grumble, he spun away. This is unbearable. I'm retiring to my room. Next time we meet, she called after him, I'd like to see my brother restored. In the ship's cabin, Laraj yanked the door open, only for Irene to barrel into him like an overexcited puppy, squealing, Felix! Laraj recoiled. Not her. His face twisted in disgust. Fuck. Disappointing. Irene blinked, then deadpanned. Obviously. Who else would it be? Felix, now fully visible, raised an eyebrow. Ever heard of Janus, the two-faced god? You're his living embodiment. Irene's eyes welled up. Clutching her chest, she wailed. Give me back my angel. Without him, I'll die. Felix stiffened. Aren't you afraid your angel will remember this conversation? Irene froze. Sweat drenched her. Her mouth opened and closed like a stranded fish. Laraj smirked, savoring her panic. Heh, relax. He won't recall a thing. Irene shot him a furious glare. You think this is funny? She snapped, her voice dripping with disdain. He continued to taunt her, smirking. Oh? And you're not two-faced yourself. With a huff, Irene yanked her hood up and turned to leave. Ugh, whatever. I don't care about some demon. Laraj stiffened, caught off guard by her abrupt dismissal. Wait! He lunged forward, grabbing her hood and yanking her back with enough force to make her yelp. Oof! Irene stumbled backward, nearly falling. only to go completely limp, letting herself be dragged like a rag doll. Laraj blinked in shock. Hey, why aren't you resisting? He stammered. No wonder Felix said you're like this. Holding her up by the hood, he swung her slightly in midair. Irene, dangling like a caught fish, merely huffed. What? Should I let my clothes tear instead? Twisting to glare at him upside down, she demanded. Well, why'd you stop me? Huh. Her face, so close, so unfairly angelic, left him flustered. His lips pressed into a thin line, cheeks burning. For a long moment he just stared, utterly speechless. Then, with a strangled noise, he abruptly dropped her. Your angel will wake up soon. Just sit tight. Ow! Irene rubbed her sore backside but quickly perked up, eyes sparkling. Wait, so you're not really him, right? Laraj crossed his arms, looking down his nose. Humph, I was split from Felix, but I'm still me. Irene rolled her eyes. That's like saying shed hair is still you. She plucked a strand, mimicking Claudia's cheerful tone. This is Jean's hair, so it's also Irene. He scowled. Fine, call me a fragment of Laraj. Then, brushing sand off her clothes, Irene wrinkled her nose. Too long. How about Lares? She grinned, patting his head. La Lares. His ears turned red. That's weird. Huh? What did you say? He turned away, gripping his coat. Maybe it's because I swallowed a quarter of his soul, he muttered. Dark energy flickered around him as his blush deepened. She seems to like this body. Maybe I just wait it out. His heart pounded strangely loud. Why do I feel so irritated? Unable to process it, he spun on his heel and stormed off, leaving a baffled Irene behind. Felix awakens. Nearby, Felix's eyelids fluttered open. Irene, perched on a chair beside his bed, gasped. Felix, but his gaze remained fixed on the ceiling. Rin wanted to see the ocean, he murmured. Then softly he turned to her. Let's go together. His words carried the clarity of the ocean tide, the rhythmic crash of waves against shore sending sprays of salt water glittering through the air. Irene walked barefoot along the damp sand, each step leaving fleeting impressions that the incoming tide quickly erased. Though everything had ultimately worked out, she couldn't muster any joy. The waves before her burned with the dying embers of sunset, their crimson hues bleeding into the darkening horizon, much like the turmoil swirling in Irene's thoughts. The island she'd painstakingly purchased now rested beneath the waves. The mercenaries she'd hired had proven useless when it mattered most. Her fingers absently traced her throat, remembering the crushing grip that had nearly ended her life. A silent scream echoed through her mind. She'd almost lost Felix forever. The memory of that demon gleefully examining Felix's stolen body still made her stomach churn. Standing bathed in the sunset's fading light, Irene watched the playful dance of waves and thought bitterly, I underestimated blossoms on withered branches. Who knew forming a spirit contract would be this difficult? But as the first stars began to appear, a small comfort emerged. At least no one had died. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore echoed restlessly. She kept gazing at the sunset when a voice suddenly called her name. Irene. Out of instinct, she turned toward the voice. Felix, smiling gently like an angel, asked softly, What are you thinking about? Standing so absent-mindedly? He stepped closer to where she stood by the sea and continued, The ocean is truly beautiful, isn't it? Irene quietly watched his every move. The waves kept rolling against the shore. She turned back and asked, Do you know? They say the northern sea of this place is called the Mermaid's Tears. The sea breeze tousled her hair as he smiled, casting a glance at her platinum hair, which shone brilliantly under the sunlight. I know, he replied. That's why it's so beautiful, isn't it? He murmured in awe. Seeing his face, Irene felt flustered. She brushed her hair back and spoke softly. So many things have happened in such a short time. She thought of Claudia, who now had a spirit standing behind her in support, and added, But in the end, We finally found a spirit for Claudia to form a contract with. Her shoes were dampened by the waves washing up on the shore. Then she said, "Actually, I went to ask the spirit of life if he had the power to purify demonic energy. He said it was impossible, unless it were an angel or a deity." The waves receded, leaving a long trail on the sand at her feet. After a moment of silence, Irene suddenly spoke up again. By the way, the demon sealed inside you, Felix? It feels a little unusual." He tilted his head and asked, "Unusual?" Under the glow of the sunset, the two of them continued their conversation. Irene raised her hand, gently biting her little finger as she explained, "Well, he's certainly a demon, cunning as one would expect. But sometimes, I feel like he's strangely human." Felix stood silently by her side, listening to her words. Then he gave a bitter, self-mocking smile and said, "In time, he and I will gradually become one." Irene froze at his words. Become one? She wondered if that meant what was different would eventually merge together and become the same. Her thoughts went to Felix being completely consumed by that demon. But she quickly reminded herself, no matter what, Felix and the demon were two different beings. She recalled the angelic radiance on his face whenever he smiled at her. Proof that their very natures were worlds apart. Shaking off her thoughts, she suddenly spoke with conviction, startling Felix. "Ha!" He looked at her in confusion. With determined eyes, brows furrowed and hands clasped tightly against her chest, Irene declared, "Felix and that demon are as different as heaven and earth. That's undeniable." The sunlight shone down on her, making her seem even more radiant. Seeing this, Felix fell silent, unable to respond. After a pause, he asked softly, "Do you want to step into the sea?" Irene blinked, puzzled. Why all of a sudden? I don't even know how to swim." "Don't worry," he reassured her. "We won't go too deep." Still confused, Irene thought to herself, why does he suddenly want to go into the water? Before she could ask further, Felix suddenly lifted her up into his arms. "Hold on tight, Irene," he said. Caught off guard, she gasped, "Wait!" But he carried her straight into the waves. Facing the setting sun, Felix whispered regretfully, "Offering my soul to a demon. Truly the worst choice I've ever made." Irene looked up at him, her voice gentle. "Why would you say that? Back then, you had no other choice." Hearing her words, Felix lowered his gaze, dejection in his eyes. "If I simply die because of this, at least I won't hurt you, Irene." She clasped her hands tightly to her chest, hesitating to reply. Then, as the sun sank into the horizon, she finally spoke. "I believe in you, Felix. And even if the worst were to happen, even if he had to leave her, she would still hold on to that belief." Felix held her close, their feet half submerged in the shimmering water, the last rays of the sunset bathing them in light. Irene reached out, wrapping her arms around his neck, her voice trembling. "Would you truly go down to hell?" Felix's answer came low and steady. She clasped her hands tightly behind his neck, whispering, "If that's the case, then I'll take responsibility." But Felix shook his head, his voice heavy with bitterness. "That right was stripped from me long ago." Startled, Irene clung even closer, lifting herself up to face him directly. Her eyes burned with determination as she cried out, "I won't let you go anywhere, Felix." He looked at her wide-eyed in surprise. Then, surrendering to the moment, he leaned closer, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You're bold, braver than I thought." Before Irene could react, his lips brushed against hers in a fleeting kiss. "I told you, I have no right," he murmured against her mouth. Held in his arms, Irene was too shocked to respond. Her face flushed crimson as she stared at him in disbelief. But Felix's eyes softened, and as they slowly closed, he pressed his lips against hers again, deeper this time, his warmth enveloping her, drawing her into a kiss that seemed to burn brighter than the setting sun. She trembled, but did not resist. Their faces were aflame, their breaths mingling as the world blurred around them. Her voice quivered as she whispered his name, Felix, just before he kissed her once more, pulling her down with him into the waves. Water splashed around them as he shielded her with his body, one arm supporting her head while the other held him steady. The two of them sank into the heat of that kiss, the glow of the sun turning the horizon into a burning canvas of desire and despair. At last, breathless, Irene pulled back slightly, her lips trembling as she tried to speak. But Felix's gaze, dark, fierce, and longing, made her heart pound harder. He leaned close, his voice ragged. Are you afraid? Or do you hurt? Her wet hair clung to her cheeks as drops of seawater ran down her face. She shook her head faintly. No, it isn't that. Felix froze, then stood abruptly, water crashing around him. His expression was unreadable as he looked away. Because you acted so recklessly, I thought you weren't afraid at all. Irene stared at him in silence. He turned his back, his voice low, almost warning. Don't hold on to me. But when he glanced back, his eyes burned with sorrow and unspoken fire. His wet hair dripped as he muttered, If you keep reaching for me, I'll believe you want to follow me into the very depths. Irene, soaked and trembling in the sea, could only gaze at him in stunned silence. If it comes to that, Felix thought grimly, then we will both be swallowed by the most primal of desires. With clenched fists, he turned toward the sinking sun, each step heavy with resolve. By the time Irene snapped out of her daze, he was already moving away. She stretched out her hand toward him, tears brimming in her eyes. Wait, at least give me the chance to say it. But only the fading glow of twilight remained before her. Her hand hung in the air, trembling, her whole body wrapped in sea and sunset. Felix, are you truly leaving me behind? She whispered, her voice breaking. She rose slowly, step by step toward the vanishing sun, her heart aching with a single question. Felix, have you truly gone? In the dark of night, Felix slowly opened his eyes. Around him stretched an endless void, scattered with faint white clouds drifting within the boundless black space. He wondered to himself, when was the first time I met Irene? Felix recalled the moment she had stood before him, both hands clenched tightly, earnestly advising, Please, practice your resistance against demonic energy. And don't tell anyone about this. Her words had left him frozen, staring at her, unsure how to respond. A book lay open in his hands, but soon he closed it, musing. How long has it been since I last heard the words demonic energy? Irene had looked at him nervously. Felix, in turn, found himself staring at her, thinking, this must be the first time I've ever really looked closely at this girl. She lifted her gaze toward him, restless and uneasy. He thought to himself, am I truly that frightening? Or is it because I'm more serious than usual that she's so wary? His eyes lingered on her lips. He noticed how, when she pressed them tightly together, they formed a little triangle as she looked up at him. Then his attention shifted to her eyes, and he thought, she really looks like a cat. And in his mind, he pictured a small black and white cat. A stray cat, much like myself. At that thought, Felix froze, startled by his own imagination. What am I even thinking? Pulling himself out of his reverie, he looked toward her and called, Lady Amber. Irene, still clenching her hands tightly, flinched and quickly lifted her gaze to him. Yes, she answered. Felix reminded himself inwardly not to frighten her. With a bright smile, he said, Thank you for pointing out my weakness. No matter how much I train, there will always be flaws, won't there? Felix reminded himself that he must always appear kind. He recalled another day, outside the tea room, when he had been sitting on a chair with a book in hand. With his eyes closed, he lazily flipped through the pages and then called out, Lady Amber. Startled, Irene, who had been peeking timidly from behind the door, nearly jumped. Without looking up from his book, Felix informed her, Claudia went out today for some business. I truly apologize. It must be troublesome for you to have come all the way here on a weekend. At his words, Irene, still standing nervously by the door, stammered, No, not at all. Felix glanced in her direction. Embarrassed, Irene released her grip on the door and murmured, "It's my fault for not informing you beforehand. I'll be leaving now." As she turned away, Felix noticed a faint bruise on her hand. He smiled lightly and called after her, "The sweets are ready as well. Since you've already come, why not join me for tea before you go?" Closing the book in his hand, he waited. The moment she heard the word sweets, Irene's throat tightened, and she swallowed hard. No, really, it's fine." She tried to refuse, but her eyes betrayed her longing. Amused, Felix laughed softly. "Ahaha, what a shame. Eating them all alone would be rather boring. But if we share the tea together, I won't feel so lonely." His warm invitation made Irene hesitate. She swallowed again and finally murmured, "Then, just for a little while." Her hand still clung nervously to the doorframe. Soon after, a tray of beautiful pastries was brought in. Irene picked one up and lifted it to her mouth. Watching her, Felix couldn't help but compare her to a little stray cat. He asked gently, "Does it suit your taste?" Caught off guard, Irene froze mid-bite, her mouth forming a little triangle as she replied, "Yes, it's delicious." Felix took a sip of tea, thinking with relief, "Good thing I bought these in advance." As Irene lowered her head and continued nibbling at the sweets, he mused, "I first thought of her as a kitten, but seeing her eat like this, she's more like a squirrel." He pictured a squirrel nibbling on a chestnut, its cheeks puffed full. Irene, her mouth adorably stuffed with cake, sipped her tea, but when she met Felix's gaze, she nearly choked. The cup trembled in her hands, tea splashing as she coughed. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked between coughs, cheeks burning. Felix hesitated, then admitted with a faint smile, "It's just, the way you eat is quite amusing." Just then, a familiar voice rang out, "Irene." Both of them turned toward the sound. Irene's face brightened instantly. "Claudia!" she called back joyfully. Claudia rushed toward her, exclaiming, "I came as soon as I heard. Did you wait long?" Irene shook her head with excitement. "No, not at all. Your brother even kept me company and treated me to tea while I waited." Claudia blinked in surprise. "My brother?" Felix only glanced at them silently, his thoughts to himself. Claudia leaned closer to Irene and whispered with suspicion, "Did he say anything strange to you?" Their hands pressed together in reassurance. Irene quickly shook her head. "No, not at all." But in Felix's eyes, Irene now had ears and a tail wagging happily behind her. Not a cat, not a squirrel, but a little puppy, he concluded. Felix's eyes lingered on Irene, who was chatting happily. "He treated me so well, really thoughtful," she said, then stole a glance at him. Felix wondered to himself, or was it just me? The air suddenly grew colder. Claudia frowned at her brother, the tension sharp enough that even Irene felt it and straightened awkwardly. Is she only like this when it comes to me? Felix wondered. Sensing something wrong, Claudia growled, "He must have said something, didn't he?" Irene flustered, waved her hands, and replied quickly, No, really, it was nothing at all." Felix studied her carefully, certain once more, a little cat. But then he froze when he caught the faint sparkle in her eyes. "My own little cat?" The thought flashed across his mind, startling him. What am I thinking about Claudia's friend, of all people? Clearing his throat, Felix averted his gaze and muttered under his breath, "Claudia's friend." That night, while Claudia was yawning lazily on her bed, she covered her mouth and asked, "So Irene, huh? What about her? I know everything there is to know." Felix folded his arms and listened silently as his sister went on confidently. "When I tell her my worries, she never looks annoyed. She just quietly listens." She nodded to herself, playing with a strand of her hair as she continued, "And she always tells me I'm not in the wrong. Those are the words I've wanted to hear for so long." Her voice softened, tinged with affection. "That's why I always want to see her." Felix sighed softly, then smiled. "Congratulations. You found yourself a good friend, Claudie." Inwardly, he reflected on Irene. She seems to be someone who truly cares about others, despite the materialistic impression she gives on the surface. He admitted to himself with a quiet admiration, "She can do what neither our parents nor I could ever manage." With that, he turned and opened the door to leave, offering her a gentle smile. "Thank you for talking with me tonight, even though it's late. Sleep well, Claudia." "Good night, you too," she waved back cheerfully. As the door closed, A voice called out, "Young master." Felix glanced over. The servant bowed slightly and reported, "You have a guest." Irene. She didn't say a word at first. Only stood there in silence, her face bruised, wet strands of hair dripping with rain. Lowering her head, trembling, she whispered, "I'm sorry for coming so late at night." Felix answered gently, "It's fine. I was still working. I haven't gone to bed yet." She accepted the hot tea he offered, murmuring a soft "ah" as the warmth spread through her hands. Felix watched her quietly, then said, "It's raining heavily outside. There are plenty of empty rooms here, so you should stay the night." Irene still kept her head bowed, her voice faint. "Thank you." Her face was bruised, lips trembling as she whispered, "I've disturbed you. Please, go on with your work." Felix frowned at the sight of her wounds, his voice low and shadowed. "It's nothing. I was just about to take a break anyway." He gave her a small smile, sipping his tea in silence. The quiet between them stretched, making her uneasy. Still clutching the warm cup, she suddenly let out a startled, "Ah!" Then, as if remembering something, she quickly turned her face away. "This bruise, it's from falling down the stairs," she explained hastily, touching her cheek. "Ouch!" she gasped, wincing from the pain. Felix calmly lifted his teacup, balancing the saucer in his other hand. "It seems you fall downstairs quite often," he remarked. Irene stammered, It's just that I'm so clumsy." She covered her bruise with her hand, laughing awkwardly to brush it off. Felix then offered, "Let me heal you." She froze, eyes wide with surprise, clutching her cup of water as if to shield herself. "There's no need. Medicine should be enough." But Felix gently pressed, "Magic will be more effective." Irene lowered her gaze, fingers nervously twirling a lock of hair to cover her face, hesitant and silent. Then Felix extended his hand toward her, his smile radiant and reassuring. "To see Lady Amber wounded like this truly pains me. Please allow me to heal Claudia's friend. Won't you?" Before that angelic smile, Irene's eyes lit up, unable to look away. She quickly averted her gaze, her hands dropping into her lap as she stammered, "Then, I'll trouble you." The moment she consented, Felix rose and stepped closer, kneeling before her. "Thank you, my lady, for granting me permission," he said warmly, making Irene fluster under his gaze. He reached toward her swollen cheek. Startled, Irene squeezed her eyes shut, blurting, "It should be me thanking, ah." The instant his hand touched her skin, a flash of magic burst forth. Her hair fluttered wildly from the surge of energy. Irene opened her eyes in shock to see Felix before her, calm and composed. Withdrawing his hand, he said softly, "It's done." She blinked, startled, as his hand brushed lightly against her hair. "Does it still hurt?" he asked. Touching her cheek, Irene shook her head. "No, not at all. In fact, my whole body feels lighter." Her eyes curved into a joyful smile. "You're so kind to me. Thank you." Felix stared at her, caught off guard, heart hammering in his chest. No, it's fine. As long as you're well," he stammered. The Felix of the present reflected. From that day on, why was it that my face flushed, my heart raced, and I thought, she smiled at me too? Through memory he questioned himself, or was it always like this from the beginning? In that recollection, Felix clutched at his chest, his heartbeat spiraling out of control. Every word she said, so beautiful, so unbearably sweet. "It drives me mad." His heart thudded relentlessly, never slowing. And then another memory surged forth. Claudia adjusting her clothes, pointing at herself with determined eyes as she declared, "I will announce it. I want to live with him for the rest of my life." One maid adjusted her dress while another brushed her hair. Claudia's words made Felix pause. He turned to her, confused. "Claudia?" he asked. She flailed her arms, making the maids quickly retreat, and shouted, "If not, Rin will have to keep living in his house." "How hateful!" She stomped her foot for emphasis. Felix, hearing this, raised his hand to his chin and spoke seriously. "You're right." Then he lowered his head, chuckling wryly, fingers brushing his chin as he mused. "It may sound strange, but it's not such a bad idea." His mind wandered to Lucas, Constantine, Benjamin, the crazed fools utterly obsessed with Claudia. If they ever caught wind of such a thing, all their hands would reach for innocent Irene. He recalled the day she came to him, drenched from the rain, and thought carefully. Her household has no brothers to protect her. Considering the situation now, and what may happen in the future, his memory flashed back to that moment when he knelt before her, healing her wound. He made a firm decision then. It would be best to keep her close. That way, no one can harm her, and she'll be able to keep smiling like that. Felix remembered Irene's radiant, adorable smile at the Chamberlain estate. He recalled when she first came to stay there how much he realized during that time. They talked together. She sat on the chair, while he stood behind her, hand resting lightly on the chair's back, smiling down at her. If I can make her feel more comfortable when she's with me, he thought. He remembered her cheerful delight as she ate her pastries, how she preferred grapefruit tarts over macarons, how she disliked candies among desserts. She sang happily while eating strawberries from her plate, and the Felix of the present thought, just watching her is enough to make every day joyful. He watched her from behind, smiling softly. Then he reaffirmed to himself, truly, it makes me so happy. But suddenly, his expression darkened, awkward and stiff. The Felix of the present thought of Irene's words again. That time, as she sat astride the wooden horse, she looked toward him and waved in greeting. Why did that feel so confusing? Her every word, every gesture. So graceful, so unbearably sweet. He looked back further still, recalling her fierce gaze as she clenched her fists and declared, even if you turn into a demon, I will follow you down to hell. Back then, Felix had stared at her, stunned, his heartbeat spiking out of control. Now, looking back, he admitted to himself, those words, they made me so happy. It hurt. Irene's cheerful smile lit up at him, and Felix couldn't help but think, she truly is the sweetest thing. Nothing in this world could ever compare. He remembered the moment their eyes had accidentally met. When I catch her gaze, he thought as Irene blushed, smiling back at him. Felix, what are you doing over there? Come here, she called. He realized then just how greedy he had become. Simply watching her from afar no longer satisfied him. He reached out toward her, thinking he had only felt the drizzle soaking into his collar. But when he came back to himself, he had pushed Irene beneath the waves. The sea crashed against him like desperate kisses, pressing him down upon her, driving him past his own control. I've been tamed, Felix admitted to himself, as their eyes locked, both trembling under the pull of each other. Before he could tame the little cat, it had already shaken his heart. From the clear droplets of water, he thought, I've done my utmost to protect her. Yet those droplets darkened, and the hell inside him only roared hotter. When the light finally turned them into pitch black, Felix confessed inwardly. At that moment, I could only reluctantly accept him. When Felix slipped free of the dream of his past, he found himself lying in a dim halo of light, surrounded by impenetrable darkness. He asked himself, did I pass out? Where is this place? My subconscious? Determination hardened in his eyes. No, this isn't the time to falter. He frowned. If it were the old me, I would never accept this. His mind conjured up the image of the demon, Elifia, grinning hideously. Felix scowled. All because of... Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts. A formless figure floated before him, speaking aloud what Felix himself had been thinking. If not for that wretched demon, you'd have finished this already, wouldn't you? Felix stared in confusion. His body lay on the ground, immobile, eyes rising toward the figure. So this is your form? He asked. Larace tilted his head, resting a hand against his chin as he looked down at Felix. Humph. Dissatisfied with my appearance, are you? He sneered. Then he added, pull yourself together. You're unconscious. You don't even realize what's happening. The one you love is about to die. The words struck deep. Felix shut his eyes, clicking his tongue. No way to wake me up, then? The demon lifted his hand upward, laughing slyly. Heh! So you finally understand your situation. Do you want me to wake you completely? Felix stayed silent, staring at him as if waiting for the terms. Larace smirked. Then give me 1/5 of your soul. Felix scoffed, ready to spit an insult, but the demon cut him off. Felix's expression darkened. What else? He demanded. The demon's grin widened. What do you think will change if you wake up? Haven't you realized? You've already lost. His hand flared with magic as he jeered. Face it, you'll never defeat him. You can't even wield high-grade spells anymore. A pool of blood spread beneath Felix. Even if you're strong, Lares pressed on, you're still not enough to match him. You can't even draw upon demonic power. Can you? Frustrated, Felix snapped. Then get to the point. I don't have time for this. The demon burst out laughing, power surging around him. Sharp, aren't you? Fine. Lend me your body. Just for a little while. I'll deal with everything. I'll save the girl you love. Completely unharmed. I promise. But of course, he added, not for free. To protect what's precious to you, I'll need a quarter of your soul. Felix lowered his gaze, a growl rumbling in his throat. His fists clenched as he lifted his head, eyes blazing. Damn it, I understand. The demon pressed again. So, do you accept? At last, Felix roared. Fine. I agree. Lares' lips curled in triumph. Good. No need to beg me. I'll do it. A surge of dark mana erupted, forming a vast magic circle beneath them. Felix lying within, Lares standing tall. Excellent. Let's begin the exchange. The demon announced. Hands on his hips, he smirked. It'll hurt a bit, you know? Felix ignored him, staring upward into the oppressive stillness. His thoughts churned. It feels like more than just my soul is being torn away. Something else is leaving me too. The magic constricted around him, dragging his consciousness toward oblivion. Why must I go this far? Then he remembered Lucas, Constantine, Benjamin. That's right. It's their fault. A cruel fire lit in his mind. Letting them die peacefully would be too merciful. As his soul began to unravel, drawn from his fingertips by the razor edge of magic, Felix made his grim vow. I'll make them taste a ray of heaven's light within the hell I create. Then he added, until they sighed in relief, he would throw them into the fire, repeating it countless times. Blades of magic that cut through the soul endlessly pierced and wrapped around him. Felix realized, yes, human morality, the dignity of life, even faith itself, all gradually vanished. His heart pounded madly in pain, his eyes slowly blurred and closed. His body was bound by countless threads of magic that held the blades cutting into his soul, stabbing through him, making him lose all sense of his body. Black and white overlapped in confusion. He wondered, what is it that I want to protect? A question flashed in his mind. What is it that makes me smile when I see it? He asked himself again. What is it that makes me cry? These questions circled endlessly in his head. As the magic gradually withdrew, he wondered once more. What is it that makes me angry? He could no longer remember. What do I still have left in this present existence? His mind grew hazy, confused by the blank spaces of memory. Then, suddenly, a familiar figure appeared, carrying petals and light. He remembered. He remembered Irene's radiant smile that shone so brightly. He realized that was love and desire. Felix regretted it then. I should never have given my soul to him. His body was enveloped in dark power, and something inside him slowly slipped away, perhaps fragments of his soul being torn apart. Felix blamed himself. I said I would protect Irene, yet now I'm about to hurt her instead. Then, standing on the boundary between black waters and white, he told himself, if so, then before I hurt Irene. He embraced her and pressed a passionate kiss onto her lips. She sank into the last traces of the blue water, and she too wrapped her arms around his neck. Felix decided he must leave. Under that twilight sky, he turned and walked away, his mind urging him forward, forcing himself to go. Tears streamed down his eyes. With each step, he swore to himself once more. I must protect Irene no matter what. The scene of memory slowly shattered, leaving only endless darkness. At dusk, in a small town, Claudia was standing by the dining table near the window, gazing at the sunset. Suddenly, the door slowly creaked open. Joyfully, she turned her head toward it. Irene, where have you been for so long? She asked, then added, my brother also went to the sea. Did you see? But when she saw Irene clearly, she froze in shock. Irene stepped in, completely drenched from head to toe. You fell into the water? Claudia asked in surprise. Irene did not answer. She lowered her head, water dripping from her hair, her face, her clothes. Claudia frowned in worry, silent for a moment, then quickly grabbed a cloak nearby and rushed to her side. Are you okay? Claudia asked seriously, her voice filled with concern. Careful, you'll catch a cold. Put this on first. She quickly draped the cloak over Irene's shoulders. Then anger flared up as she shouted, "Wait! Was it that bastard?" Before she could finish, the sound of water dripping onto the floor filled the silence. Claudia froze, her hands trembling. "Rin?" she called softly. But Irene didn't respond. The room fell still. "Are you crying?" Claudia asked again. But Irene remained silent, expression unreadable, wet hair hanging down heavily. Then, slowly, she lifted her head and hesitantly called out, "Claudia!" Hearing her name, Claudia immediately responded, full of worry, "Irene, I'm here." Tears streamed uncontrollably down Irene's face as she whispered in despair, "Felix is gone," she added softly. Hearing those words, Claudia was utterly stunned, wide-eyed and speechless. Irene hesitated, then continued, her voice trembling, "He will never come back again." Silence stretched between them. Claudia's hand, which had been resting gently on Irene's shoulder, slipped down. Outside, the sun was still sinking into the sea. She brushed her bangs back quietly, saying nothing. The air in the room grew heavy. Claudia pulled Irene into her arms. The two of them embraced, wordless, in the stillness. The 32nd emperor of the Loxodont Empire, Benicia IV, had passed away after a long battle with illness. His face was covered with a white cloth, and soon after, Lucas Dan Ranloxon ascended the throne as the 33rd emperor. Inside the imperial palace, the new emperor lounged on the throne, one arm propped up, legs crossed casually. The imperial crown sat beside him. Someone asked, "Your Majesty, how do you feel?" Lucas narrowed his eyes arrogantly, looking down with his blazing crimson crystal eyes. Resting his cheek on one hand, he observed as the man before him bowed deeply in respect. The emperor smirked. "Humph. Didn't expect you to know how to show respect." His words dripped with mockery. Benjamin raised his head, grinning, not an ounce of fear in his expression, only ridicule. "Ha! But of course, I sincerely congratulate your Majesty on your ascension." His tone was light, almost careless. Lucas exhaled softly, amusement flickering across his face. He leaned back, no longer resting on his hand. "Well, this was bound to happen sooner or later. Nothing remarkable about it," the emperor said flatly. Then he added, "Wouldn't it be strange if I weren't the one in this position?" Benjamin closed his eyes with pride. "Your words are true, Majesty." Then his violet eyes shifted toward someone else in the chamber. Lucas followed the glance, his own red eyes narrowing with hostility. "If the one in this seat were not me," Lucas muttered darkly, "then I would kill the man sitting over there." Cedric, lounging lazily on a long couch, felt their gazes and glanced up in mild surprise. Meeting their stares, he smirked and answered in a carefree tone, "Oh my, your Majesty's words sound frightening. What must I do to erase your suspicions?" He spoke softly, harmlessly. Then he added, "I have no interest in that throne." "Ha!" Lucas clicked his tongue, dropping his arm and leaning against the throne's armrest. "Sit properly, Cedric." Cedric laughed lightly, stretching before sitting up straight. "As you command, your Majesty." Lucas shot him a look of disdain. "I know you love your own life. That's the only reason you say you have no interest in this coveted seat." Cedric raised an eyebrow, then chuckled. "Well, you're not wrong." After sitting upright, he covered his mouth with a hand, yawning. "But more than interest, I simply hate unnecessary trouble." At those words, Lucas scowled, brows furrowing in irritation. Cedric merely glanced back at him, a teasing smile on his lips. With a long sigh, Lucas withdrew his gaze. "Humph, that simple-mindedness of yours. It's both your strength and your weakness." But before he could finish his remark, the doors of the palace burst open. Two guards rushed in, panicked, urging restraint. All eyes turned toward the man who stumbled in, breathing heavily, face twisted with unease. "Your Majesty!" he cried. Lucas's eyes narrowed sharply, anger flashing as he glared at him. "Constantine!" he growled, spitting each word with venom. "And what is this disrespect supposed to mean? Is this how you congratulate me on my ascension?" His tone dripped with scorn. Constantine steadied his breathing and finally spoke. "Forgive me, your Majesty. That matter is not important right now." Benjamin leaned in, curious to hear more. But Constantine hesitated before continuing. Claudia has returned. At those words, Benjamin's eyes widened in surprise. Oh ho, he muttered. Lucas, still lounging on the throne, reacted differently. His expression lit up with uncontrollable excitement, and he nearly leapt from his seat. She's finally abandoned that brat Amber and come back to me? He exclaimed, his voice filled with wild delight, twisting the meaning as he pleased. But Constantine quickly shattered that illusion. No, she returned together with Irene Amber. That girl is of greater importance. Before he could finish, Lucas interrupted, unable to contain himself. His hands clenched the armrests of the throne, his heartbeat pounding as his lips curved into a feverish smile. No matter. If Claudia is willing to return to me, then raising a mere Amber along the way is of no consequence. Benjamin, unimpressed by the emperor's frenzy, looked up with a sigh and spoke dryly. Your Majesty, perhaps you should let Lord Constantine finish his report. Lucas covered his flushed face with one hand, suppressing his grin. With full confidence, he declared, I cannot imagine any reason for her return other than me. I'll overlook your earlier insolence, Constantine. Now tell me, where is she? Constantine exhaled heavily, helpless before such a ruler, then continued. It seems Claudia and Irene Amber gained entry to the island by means of some strange merchant caravan. More importantly, Benjamin raised his brows in interest as Constantine's tone grew weighty. They returned accompanied by a great spirit. At the town outside the castle, Claudia, Irene, and Elifia are on their way back together. Lucas straightened, eyes narrowing sharply. A great spirit? You mean, Elifia? Constantine nodded. Yes, his power is nearly comparable to that of a spirit king, perhaps even beyond. He cannot be measured by ordinary means. The room fell deathly silent. Scarlet light seemed to shimmer in the emperor's crimson gaze as shock robbed him of words. Benjamin broke the silence, recalling past conversations. Claudia once said she was incapable of forming a contract with a spirit. And yet, Lucas cut him a sidelong glare, but Benjamin met it calmly, smirking as he added, she must have used some trick to bind one. Look at her now, returning with a great spirit. Quite the spectacle, wouldn't you say? Irene Amber, how magnificent! His mocking praise rang through the chamber, filling the tension with a sharp edge of irony. Benjamin leaned back, speaking casually as if in idle conversation. Sooner or later, Claudia will be revered by the people. Her name will be etched into history. Lucas sat in silence, but his hands gripped the throne until they trembled, veins bulging across his skin. His eyes grew sharp as blades, his voice a low growl laced with menace. It may not be as I predicted, but the day will come when Claudia belongs to me, completely. He exhaled harshly, then continued, his arrogance boiling over. I still have plenty of time. If not now, then later. That day will come, when I rise even higher. Both Benjamin and Cedric turned their eyes on him, listening to the emperor's boastful vow. Lucas extended his hand, voice resolute, like the bloom of a black rose heralding war. I will spark the conquest to come. Lounging arrogantly, one leg crossed over the other upon the throne, the emperor laughed with unshakable pride. 3.5 years had passed, since the day Felix disappeared into the horizon, walking toward the sea beneath the fading sunset. Now, a cabinet filled with glass vials and stacks of books sat in a quiet room. Someone was writing furiously, but suddenly paused. It was Irene. She looked up, her lips curving into a bright smile at the figure who had just entered. Ah, Claudia. Long time no see. Claudia's hand lingered anxiously on the doorknob. Rin, are you still staying up all night studying again? She scolded softly, before quickly crossing the room. Placing a hand on Irene's shoulder, she smiled with a hint of threat. Irene scratched the back of her neck sheepishly, laughing it off. Well, you also come home late from work, don't you? But in her heart, Irene sighed. At this rate, guzzling stimulants like this, I'll probably die young. Still, she pushed the thought aside with a faint grin. Claudia, choosing to change the subject, leaned on the back of a chair and smiled. Show me what you're working on. Of course, Irene answered gladly. Soon, the clinking of glassware echoed through the room. She picked up 2 small vials of herbs, pouring their contents into an empty container. Can you believe it's already been 3.5 years since Felix left? Yes, Claudia replied gently, watching her. Irene stayed focused on her mixture, eyes fixed on the liquid as she spoke. So much has changed. Claudia's voice lowered. When Lucas took the throne, Benjamin and Constantine quickly became his most trusted aides. Together, the three of them, Emperor and his two right arms, stood at the pinnacle. From their arrogant gaze, it was clear. The three factions, nobility, royalty, and the church, have finally allied. And besides, she added, remembering, Elifia and I have also risen to higher standing. And you, Irene, you're capable of brewing divine elixirs now. Swirls of potion blended on the desk, glowing faintly. Claudia suddenly pointed upward, remarking playfully, and I think you might even have some talent in the arts too. Irene's hands trembled, clutching her vials as she stammered, That's not my strength. Denying it quickly, Claudia rested her arm lazily on the chair behind her, speaking with quiet gravity. We've dragged this conflict out so long, no one's willing to yield. In the end, someone will have to die before this war can truly end. Her words hung heavy in the air, but Irene kept mixing. Then, suddenly, her eyes lit up with excitement. Holding up a new vial, she declared, just one more ingredient, and it'll be done. Claudia leaned in, hands clasped behind her back, watching curiously. Really? Ooh, let me see. Irene tilted the flask, pouring the final liquid. At once, smoke hissed out as the mixture flared. But instead of settling, the potion boiled violently, morphing into a viscous black-purple sludge. Irene froze, horrified, jaw slack. What? Claudia blinked, still curious, though she knew immediately something had gone wrong. Dark fumes spread through the room, choking the air. Claudia, quick! Irene cried, reaching out, but too late. The vial exploded. Shards of glass and clouds of acrid smoke filled the room with a deafening blast. When the haze finally cleared, both girls stood covered in soot, hair wild and faces blackened, staring blankly into space. Claudia was the first to break the silence, forcing a wry smile. That's enough for today, Rin. Let's stop here and let you rest. Irene let out a puff of smoke and sighed. Fine. Not long after, she received a letter. The messenger handed it to her with a brief instruction. Please attend this. Blinking in surprise, Irene accepted the envelope, unfolded it, and frowned. What is this? And why did it just come out of nowhere? The messenger answered calmly. It's an invitation to the victory banquet. Her confusion deepened. Tilting her head, letter still in hand, she muttered, Why should I attend a celebration for an invasion? Leaning casually with one hand on his hip, Cedric replied with his usual handsome grin. Don't be so blunt. The truth is, there's someone I've got my eye on. Irene arched a brow. Who? After the banquet, he'll be granted the title of Count of the Roxodent Empire and Duke of the small kingdom of Rixa, Cedric explained smoothly. He's a war hero. That only made Irene's frown deepen. A war hero? Still smiling, Cedric elaborated. His record is spotless. No family ties, no suspicious connections. Every battle he's fought, he went in alone. And every time he returned with victory. Irene rested her chin on her hand, a thought sparking in her mind. I suppose? But still, I'm not so sure. Her expression turned hesitant, Constantine's cold, piercing gaze flashing across her memory. Noticing her unease, Cedric cut in lightly, brushing away her hesitation. Don't be too wary. He might be exactly the person we need. Irene looked up, unconvinced. And if we're wrong? What if we choose badly? Cedric shrugged. Didn't you once say you felt like our plan was missing a final piece? Like a puzzle with a gap. He gave a meaningful smile. I believe he is that missing piece. Slowly, Irene's lips curved into a smile. That does make sense. But before she could finish speaking, Cedric interrupted with a playful jab. Which is why you'll be the one to lure him in. Her worldview shattered on the spot. What? Irene stared at him, wide-eyed in disbelief. Cedric folded his arms proudly, grinning from ear to ear. After all, you've got quite the talent for persuasion and seduction. Her face went pale. Hold on. This war hero? He isn't a woman, is he? Hands on his hips again. Cedric pointed at her like a teacher scolding a student. You still haven't fixed that habit, have you? You talk sweet as honey when it's to me. That's irrelevant, Irene protested, sweating bullets. Cedric only laughed, far too optimistic. Hey, you managed to lure me in once, didn't you? The first time's tough, but after that it gets easier. Though his words were meant to reassure, Irene groaned, sinking deeper into her chair, utterly distressed. Still, Cedric extended a hand to her. Of course, I wouldn't just throw you at anyone. You've got a good eye, Irene. Take a look at him, then judge for yourself. Resigned, Irene lowered her head with a long sigh. Ugh, fine. I'll do it. Somewhere, a voice rose. A war hero? Amid fire and smoke, a lone warrior stood upon a mound of corpses, twin blades in hand. When I saw that man, wielding 2 swords as he tore through the battlefield, I thanked the heavens he was not my enemy. Those were no ordinary blades. The demon's sword, killing without pause, one edge slick with fresh blood. His strikes did not merely pierce through armor, but cleaved through flesh and bone as though they were nothing. Wherever he passed, bodies piled up, as though blasted apart by explosives. A man who fought with twin swords, eyes gleaming with a cold blue light, flames curling around him. People said he was like the very incarnation of a god of war and victory, descended to the mortal realm. Surely such a god would take his likeness. In the imperial study, Lucas sat at his desk, poring over reports about the so-called war hero. His brow furrowed in disbelief. What is this? Did someone hire a novelist to write these reports? At his side, Benjamin, wrapped in a half-fastened cloak, chuckled. You'll be even more surprised once you read further. It's all described in flowery, exalted prose. The emperor's red eyes lifted from the page to fix on him. Are you certain these reports are reliable? Granted, if he truly takes the field, victory would be assured. But still, Lucas hesitated. Benjamin smiled, eyes narrowing with delight as he raised a hand. Your Majesty need only look at the facts. 100 battles, 100 victories, with nothing but 2 swords. He is special, remarkable beyond measure. Then his gaze deepened, glittering with hungry amusement. Such a jewel is far too dazzling to be wasted as a mere hound. That would be a shame. Lucas dropped the papers with a sigh, exasperated by Benjamin's barely contained excitement. Yet, after a pause, he smirked in agreement. You're not wrong. Still, try not to let that grotesque expression of yours slip out so openly. He leaned back, voice lowering with sly anticipation. Besides, if I extend a touch of mercy to someone so insignificant, Claudia herself might just throw herself into my hands. The emperor's face lit up with dark delight, a laugh spilling out as his cheeks flushed. His blood-red eyes gleamed with eager, feverish anticipation. At a certain tavern, a voice called out, "One drink, please." The bartender slid a glass across the counter and added with a smile, "This one's on the house." When Irene saw the drink, her eyes widened. Whoa! The color's so pretty. What's it called? The bartender smiled politely. It's called Hair of the Dog. The name left Irene blinking in surprise. Hair of a dog? In her mind's eye, an image of a little puppy barking woof, woof popped up. The bartender, at a loss, rubbed the back of his neck and explained awkwardly. It's named after an old saying, that if a dog bites you, rubbing its fur on the wound eases the pain. In other words, the best cure for a hangover is another drink. Oh, I see. Irene nodded, finally understanding. The bartender leaned a little closer, speaking with quiet sincerity. Personally, I think it can also mean that sometimes only people can heal the wounds left by other people. The golden drink glowed in the glass. It suits you, milady, he added softly. Me? Irene blinked, surprised, tilting the glass in her hand. What? Don't tell me you're... She leaned forward teasingly. The bartender's face darkened, irritation flickering beneath a strained smile. Ha! Don't misunderstand. It's just a drink. But then he quickly added, though, if you could, please visit often. Martina could use some encouragement. Irene tilted her head, eyes narrowing curiously at his expression. As he polished another glass, cheeks faintly red, he murmured, "She's been hurt many times. I only hope someone will give her the warmth she deserves." Seeing his earnest face, Irene grinned mischievously. Ah, so she's the one, huh? The bartender's jaw tightened. He forced another brittle smile. Ha ha. There's no need for you to get the wrong idea. Irene burst out laughing. Ahaha. Don't worry. I'll be right behind you, cheering on your beautiful love story. His face flushed crimson. He slammed the counter and shouted in embarrassment. It's not like that. Just then, the doorbell jingled. The bartender froze, quickly straightened up, and bowed toward the entrance. Welcome. Irene turned to see the newcomer, her eyes widening in surprise. It's been a while, the woman said. Martina. Irene stammered. Martina's lips curved in a calm smile. A year and a half, at least. I've been waiting for you, Irene. I was even thinking of coming to find you myself. She stepped forward in a dazzling gown, an attendant removing her cloak with practiced hands. Irene, flustered, brushed her hair back and looked away. I'm sorry. The truth is, I've lost all of my powers now. Inwardly, she thought grimly to herself, this book story has already veered far from the original. I have no idea what's going to happen next. She told herself she had no right to face Martina without bringing her any news. But Martina cut into her thoughts with a warm smile. Do you still dwell on what I said before? It doesn't matter. Whatever it is you want, you can come to me. Irene blinked at her words, caught off guard. Really? Martina rested one hand on her hip, the other beckoning playfully. Ask me anything, and I'll answer. Still flustered, Irene hesitated. Then, at that inviting wave, she walked closer. Then, pardon me, Martina. I'm really grateful. Martina's hand lingered atop her head as Irene tried to gather her thoughts. It took her a while before she finally spoke. I'm not sure if this information will be useful, but I think it might be of value to you. Martina chuckled, stroking Irene's hair. Even a scrap of information is fine. Thanks to you, I've made quite a fortune already. I should reward you, don't you think? Her words brought to mind a chilling description. The Walter of war and victory, the mercenary of judgment and ruin, the murderer who slaughters all before him. A man standing amidst a mountain of corpses, twin swords in hand, eyes glowing like a demon's. Green fire in the dawn light. So many titles, all for one blood-stained mercenary. Irene flipped through the documents, brow furrowed. Not even a priest, yet wielding judgment? What in the world is he doing on a battlefield? She muttered to herself, recalling the original story. From the descriptions, his swordsmanship's practically at grandmaster level. So after the main plot ends, a superhuman like this just pops up? Seriously. With a weary sigh, she stretched her arms and legs before turning another page. One note caught her eye. A mercenary. Orphan. No birth records. No sign of visiting brothels despite months on campaign. Countless scraps of unverified information. Irene tapped the paper, whispering, just looking at this is enough to smell danger. Dropping the file back onto the desk, she exhaled. They call it defeating the enemy. But in truth, it's just slaughter. Pushing the papers aside, she stood and resolved. Enough for now. First, I should prepare for the victory banquet. She went to her wardrobe, rifling through dresses. Need to make a good impression. Best wear something striking. Her hands paused when she touched a familiar gown. A soft pink dress. She realized with a start, spring has already come. Later, at the Imperial Palace in the late afternoon, a voice called out, Sis! Irene turned, startled by the familiar tone. Dressed in a peach blossom dress, her makeup done to perfection. She spun and asked in surprise, Liam? Is that you? The young man looked a little awkward but nodded. Who else calls you sis? If not me? Fair point. Irene tilted her head, still suspicious. But then her eyes widened as she noticed his stature. Wait, when did you get so tall? What happened to you? Liam rubbed his ear sheepishly, smiling. Like I said, I just grew taller. That's all. This was Liam Amber, Irene's younger brother. Honest and harmless. You've shot up so much. And my height? Did you borrow it or something? She teased, reaching out casually. Huh. Liam blinked in confusion. Just kidding. Irene waved it off with a grin. Then, noticing his dark under eyes, she frowned. Hold on. What's with your eyes? Liam scratched his cheek, laughing awkwardly. That. I stayed up late last night. Guilt tugged at Irene. She lowered her gaze. I shouldn't have asked you to come. I'm sorry. As they walked together, Liam shook his head gently. No, it's my fault for overworking. Not yours. Then he quickly changed the subject. By the way, why'd you ask me to escort you? Where's Lady Chamberlain? Claudia's busy. Irene smiled faintly. Besides, you've seemed exhausted lately. I thought maybe this could be a chance for you to relax a little. Her tone softened, eyes warm. And honestly, I'm touched that you came even though you're tired. Before she could finish, Liam jumped in brightly. Being here with you is the best way to relax. Though, I'm really curious. Who exactly is this warrior everyone's talking about? He grew even more excited, grabbing her hand eagerly. I love the bloodshed and the victories. There are so many rumors about him. I've been curious for ages. He added with sparkling eyes. I can't wait to finally see him in the flesh. Irene stared at him, utterly speechless, her lips stammering. Yeah. You're so hyped you even got your face covered by speech bubbles. Huh? What are you talking about, sis? Liam tilted his head. Nothing. Forget it. Irene brushed it off and changed the subject. Come on, let's go inside. Yes, ma'am. Liam answered obediently. Inside the dazzling palace, glittering and luxurious, people dressed in extravagant clothes mingled, talking and dancing. Irene and Liam blended into the lively, noisy crowd, but Irene already felt drained. She slouched, sighing, ugh, in front of the throng. Liam, holding a glass of wine, glanced at her, when suddenly, a voice called out, "Oh my, Lady Irene!" Her face instantly brightened with a smile as she turned toward the voice. Lady Dellen Erica. Placing a hand on her chest, Erica greeted her. Such a surprise to see you here, my lady. Did you come for something? I never thought I'd run into you in a place like this. Behind her stood several other noble ladies. Irene quickly stepped forward, explaining, it's because Liam said he wanted to see the warrior in all those rumors. She used Liam as a shield, making the poor boy flush crimson from embarrassment. I see. Erica laughed, and the ladies behind her giggled along. Used as the scapegoat, Liam could only glare at Irene, red-faced, torn between shame and frustration. Irene, however, paid him no mind. Actually, I wanted to see him with my own eyes too, Erica continued, touching her cheek and tilting her head dreamily, as if picturing the man's face. I heard his beauty surpasses the limits of human comprehension. Wow! Irene exclaimed, watching Erica's enraptured expression. Erica touched her chin, adding with a playful smile, it's just a pity he's supposedly a little bloodthirsty. Just a little? Isn't that the most important problem of all? Irene screamed inwardly. She quickly snapped back to herself, covering her mouth and lowering her head. But he's running late. Behind her, Liam stood curiously, while Erica and the other young ladies remained in front. One of them suddenly peeked out and spoke with a graceful laugh. Perhaps he's staying behind the banquet, preparing for the next battle. All three turned their attention to her words. But would a murderer really care for parties? Another lady mused aloud. Maybe he knows he's just a commoner and doesn't dare step foot here. Yet another suggested. Irene forced a nervous laugh. Haha. But didn't reply, thinking to herself, these noble ladies always saying whatever comes to mind. Just then, clack, the great hall's doors swung open. Warrior Wanter has arrived, the herald announced loudly. A man strode forward at once. Every noble lady's gaze darted toward him, eyes sparkling, cheeks flushed with admiration. And Irene froze where she stood. A man with jet-black hair and scars all over his body appeared. Irene froze, staring at him in shock. From Walter's body, thick waves of dark violet miasma spread, chilling the air around him. He strode forward with unshaken steps, his face and eyes betraying no emotion. Irene stood rooted in place, unable to speak, her mind sinking into silence, until suddenly, with a start, hope flared within her. She called out, trembling, Felix! The name made Walter falter for just a moment. His cold, emotionless sapphire eyes flicked in her direction. He said nothing, yet the world around them seemed to fall unnaturally quiet. In that instant, it felt as though only the two of them existed, locked in each other's gaze. Later, after the banquet, Irene collapsed onto her bed, while Liam sat on the one beside it. He blinked at her, confused. Sis! Irene lay face down, cheek pressed against the sheets, eyes rolling upward without answering. Seeing no response, Liam shouted, Sis! She jolted up suddenly, bracing herself on her arms, dazed. What? Her mind drifted back to Walter's retreating figure. Do you know that warrior? Liam asked innocently, tilting his head. I mean, you didn't even talk to each other, so I thought you weren't acquainted. But after seeing him, you got so weird. Noticing her strangeness, he squinted suspiciously. Irene flopped back onto the bed, burying her face again. I don't know him. Then what is it? Liam pressed. But Irene didn't even seem to hear him, lying motionless. Liam sighed. Geez, sis, your soul's completely gone. With nothing else to do, he stood up. If you're this out of it, I'll just head back to my room. Still no reply. Irene remained sprawled, lifeless. At the door, Liam hesitated, then turned back. If anything happens, call me. Okay? I'm really going now. No answer. Guess I've lost her signal completely. He shook his head and left, closing the door behind him. The ticking of the clock echoed in the silence. Irene remained unmoving, face buried in the bed, until slowly, she rolled onto her back, frowning deeply in thought. Her hand drifted to her stomach. Felix. She remembered the icy glance he had given her just moments ago. How could someone change so much in only 3.5 years? Was that magic? Or the power of the demon inside him? Images flashed in her mind. Felix as he once was, standing in the garden, cherishing life more than anyone else. Could such a man really kill so mercilessly? No, impossible. She shook her head, denying the thought. She recalled his gentle smile, his pure white hair. The Felix she knew, who valued life, could never be that blood-soaked warrior. And yet, in her mind's eye, the image of his current self overlapped. Black hair, sharp gaze, his whole being tainted with blood. A white rose, pure and flawless. A red rose, blooming with sharp thorns. Two sides utterly opposed. Irene thought back to the moment their eyes met earlier. Among all her swirling doubts, one thing stood out with crystal clarity. Those eyes. Those blue eyes. They could only belong to Felix. Returning to the present, Irene pressed her hand against her stomach, lying still. In the silence, she whispered his name. Felix. Her thoughts drifted to that sunset by the sea, when he had walked toward the light, leaving them behind, sacrificing himself to protect them. And now, perhaps it was that same reason, the same vow to protect, that had brought him back in another form. Felix and Walter. Two names. Two figures, overlapping in her mind. One, a pure and radiant strength. The other, a dark and abyssal power.